Chapter 16:15. Yuji's scream rang out like a pig being slaughtered. Many people were taken aback. Dracula was taken aback, so was Poseidon, while the great wizard and patriarch Penglai looked over with a frown. Bufang frowned and glanced into the distance. There, he saw Susanoo walking over on the wave. He was barefooted, and his armor was tattered. He walked on the waves, but he looked very sharp. Dark purple energy surged, trapping many Hua people. What is this guy doing? Dracula could not help but ask, twitching the corner of his mouth. Susanoo's behavior confused him. Is he going to use these mortals to threaten Bufang by capturing so many Hua people? How could he do something so disgusting? Although Poseidon was very displeased with Bufang, Susanoo's behavior made him even more displeased. They were gods in myths and legends, and they were the gods in the eyes of mortals. Attacking mortals was tantamount to throwing their status as gods to the ground and trampling on them. Perhaps only a god from Sakura Island like Susanoo could be so unscrupulous. Bound by Bufang's stripe, Vermilion Bird could only struggle and cry, trying to stimulate Bufang's soft heart with sympathy. However, Bufang was not in the mood to pay attention to him. Bufang turned his eyes and rested them on Susanoo. The monk, Chief Luo, Xiao Ai Yu Gu, and the others were all bound by Susanoo. Like tentacles, the dark purple energy wrapped around their necks. He could crush their necks and kill them at any time. Hand over the treasure, or else all these Hua people will die, Susanoo said coldly, his eyes flashing with a dark purple light. A threat. This was a blatant threat. Bufang's strength was beyond their expectation. The collision of brute force had thrown Susanoo thousands of miles away. Even Susanoo was a little shocked by this power. Without a doubt, Bufang should be an Earth-level deity of China, and an extraordinary one at that. In terms of raw power, Susanoo might not be as strong as Bufang, but strength was far from being the key to success. Susanoo smirked. The great magister was so angry that his beard was bulging. This kind of behavior was shameful to them. As a god, Susanoo was really shameless to do such a thing. The top cultivators all had an unspoken rule, which was not to attack mortals. Once they attacked mortals, wouldn't the world be in chaos? Patriarch Penglai snorted angrily. As a Hua citizen and Yuji's patriarch, how could he allow Susanoo to act so presumptuously? Patriarch Penglai thought to himself. Immediately, he patted his waist and several flying swords flew out of his spatial pouch. The bronze immortal sword glinted with an immortal light as it shot towards Susanoo in the distance. Susanoo suddenly turned his head and looked at the flying sword that was shooting towards him. "How dare you?" Susanoo said coldly. The flying swords were only dozens of meters away from him. However, the next moment, the dark purple tentacles behind Susanoo exploded with power. Bam! A man who was entangled by the tentacles was squeezed and coughed up a mouthful of blood. If he continued to exert force, the Hua citizen might even be crushed to death. The power of a god was indeed not something mortals could resist. Buzz, the flying sword stopped. They did not move forward. Patriarch Penglai was furious, but he did not have the strength to do so. He was indeed stronger than Susanoo, but there was a limit to his strength. It was impossible for him to save so many people in a short time. Fear of harming the innocent was exactly what he was feeling right now. Susanoo ignored Patriarch Penglai. His ice-cold gaze locked onto Bufang, and there was a faint killing intent swirling within it. Yuji's face was pale. They were not the only ones. Chief Luo, Xiao Ai, and the others looked ashen. Sitting cross-legged with his palms put together and eyes closed, he was chanting Amitabha. He was the calmest of them all. After all, it was difficult to stay calm when death was approaching. Hand over the immortal robe, or all these people will die. Susanoo was very pleased with himself. This trick was too practical. These so-called gods always had mercy in their hearts, which was the mercy they had for mortals. By seizing their mercy and making a big deal out of it, they would always reap the ultimate benefit. Bufang frowned and looked coldly at Susanoo in the distance. He looked coldly at Susanoo in the distance. This kind of behavior is really despicable. Let them go, Bufang said faintly. You want to save them? Then hand over the immortal robe. It belongs to me. Susanoo sneered. I'm not negotiating with you. I'll give you 3 seconds to think about it and let them go. Bufang said expressionlessly. Is he crazy? Patriarch Penglai, Count Dracula, and the others were somewhat confused. What is Bufang trying to do? Why is he threatening me instead? Senior, don't be like this. Be tactful. Yuji's heart trembled. He felt as if a knife was hanging over his head, and Susanoo could take his life with just a thought. Bufang doesn't want to provoke Susanoo anymore. Susanoo was taken aback for a moment, then he chuckled. How dare you threaten me? The expression on Susanoo's face became ferocious in an instant. Then I'll make a bet first. Susanoo let out a long roar. The tentacle was about to crush a man's throat in an instant. Bufang focused his eyes. In a flash, he moved. Bufang had lost his patience with Susanoo. Boom! The water under his feet exploded. In the blink of an eye, Bufang appeared in front of Susanoo as if he had teleported. At that moment, everyone was in a trance. Even Susanoo did not expect that. At this moment, the dark purple tentacle had not yet crushed the man's throat. Boom! Susanoo's vision blurred. He only felt a strong arm suddenly grabbing his neck. So fast. Poseidon, the great wizard, and the others all sucked in their breath. The speed Bufang had shown just now was too amazing. I don't want to listen to you now, Bufang said faintly. The next moment, a mighty force exploded out of Bufang's arm. Susanoo felt a tremendous force rush into his body. Bam! That dark purple energy suddenly exploded. All the people who were bound by the tentacle fell like dumplings into a pot. Patriarch Penglai reacted quickly. Then, he slapped the water with his hand. Bam! An explosion rang out. Seawater splashed into the air. They turned into soft ocean balls that wrapped around the people's bodies, causing them to float in the air. Susanoo's eyes went wide. The next moment, he let out a long roar. Blue veins bulged on his arm as he smashed it toward Bufang's head. The immortal robe is mine. Susanoo growled. Bam! However, his punch was caught by Bufang with a backhand. He clenched his fist, and with a crack, the front part of Susanoo's head was crushed. Bufang's face was expressionless. Then, he kicked Susanoo in the chest. Bam! A deafening rumble rang out. Susanoo's back suddenly exploded, and the seawater split apart. His body was kicked backward, rolling and crawling. I hate it when people threaten me, said Bufang. The vermilion robe fluttered. The sleeves of his vermilion robe fluttered. When he reappeared, he was right in front of Susanoo, who had just risen from the sea. The tip of his foot kicked Susanoo's chest again, and his chest exploded. In front of Bufang, Susanoo was like a defenseless weakling. Susanoo could hardly believe that the gap between him and Bufang was so big. A terrible divine sense suddenly fell on him. Susanoo felt a chill run through his body. This coldness made him feel as if there was an aura of death spreading out. He saw death in Bufang's eyes. I'm going to die. Susanoo shuddered. The next moment, he jumped to his feet and was about to flee. Seeing Susanoo running away in a panic, Lin Sanjiu was stunned. Bufang raised his hand and made a grabbing gesture at Susanoo. Boom! At this moment, the water seemed to flow backward. Susanoo's body was sent flying backward. Bufang clenched his fist. The muscles on his Taotai arm bulged, and the roar of a beast seemed to ring out from it. At that moment, everyone was in a trance. Bufang threw a punch. Susanoo's body was instantly hit by the punch. Bam! The punch hit Susanoo's body, causing it to explode in an instant. It turned into a torrent of blood and splashed down. This scene stunned everyone present. One punch had blown up a god. Susanoo was the guardian of Sakura Island. Even Patriarch Penglai's beard trembled. He was taken aback. The corner of the great wizard's mouth twitched. He could not even hold his wand properly. Count Dracula could not even say a word. He had blown up Susanoo with one punch. Doesn't this mean that Bufang also has the strength to kill us? How terrifying is the strength of this chef from Hua? Is it because of the immortal robe? For a moment, Dracula's desire for the vermilion robe grew stronger. For a moment, Dracula's desire for the vermilion robe grew stronger. An invisible will was about to fly out of Susanoo's shattered body. However, Bufang focused his eyes. The god of cooking's eye could see through everything. As he looked straight at it, Susanoo's will began to burn. The latter completely turned into nothingness, twisted, and disappeared. Perhaps Susanoo himself had never wondered why things had turned out this way. In front of Bufang, he did not even have the strength to fight back. Poseidon and the others fell silent. Bufang's strength was beyond their imagination. Although they still had a backup plan, the fighting prowess that Bufang had shown just now was enough to dispel their thoughts of getting the vermilion robe. They had lost the treasure that occupied a quarter of Earth's spiritual energy in vain. They were very sad, but there was nothing they could do. Bound by Bufang, Vermilion Bird hovered beside Bufang. She was struggling. In the surrounding sea, Yugu and the others were held up by the water balls. They were dumbfounded as they watched Susanoo explode. Brutal, violent, and too strong. Senior. My senior is too strong. Yuji's face flushed with excitement. Chief Luo, Xiao Ai, and the others were also shocked. Bufang had killed Susanoo with one punch, as if he was crushing an ant. Then, he rested his eyes on Vermilion Bird. He frowned. He had a headache, wondering how he should deal with her. Suddenly Bufang paused. He turned his head to look at the bronze gate in the distance. Suddenly, he remembered the pattern on the bronze gate. The pattern seemed to have told him a lot of information, and there seemed to be a lot of things sealed behind the sealing array on the bronze gate. Gurgle, gurgle, all of a sudden, the sea began to spin. It was as if a huge whirlpool had appeared, spinning ceaselessly. Everyone was shocked by this scene. Everyone turned to look at it. The whirlpool grew larger and larger, and in its center was a bottomless black hole. As the whirlpool grew larger, so did the black hole. Gradually, the hole grew larger and larger. Its diameter reached thousands of miles. Terrible spiritual energy surged out of the hole and spread rapidly, stirring up a gust of wind on the sea. What happened? Everyone was dumbfounded as they stared at the hole. The expressions of Patriarch Penglai and the others changed dramatically. They looked at Bufang and Vermilion Bird, who was standing behind Bufang, with complicated expressions on their faces. A seal. The seal on the spiritual energy sealing point was broken. The immortal robe and the egg were the keys to suppress the seal. The egg was broken, the immortal robe was taken away, and the seal was gone. The recovery of Earth's spiritual energy had begun. Chapter 16:16. The seal on the spiritual energy sealing point had been broken. The spiritual energy had been completely restored. This was something that everyone present had been looking forward to for a long time. They had simulated it for a long time just for this moment, hoping that they could be prepared when the spiritual energy was completely restored. It would also weaken the impact of the revival of spiritual energy on the world. Bufang held the divine sense ribbon in one hand, and the other end was connected to Vermilion Bird. However, Bufang's focus at the moment was not on Vermilion Bird, but on the huge black hole in the distance. It was a shocking scene. The seawater swirled and turned into a huge black hole, which kept rumbling and spinning. When the water flowed into it, it seemed to be devoured, bringing an unparalleled visual impact. Patriarch Penglai and the others were extremely excited. They stared at the scene, so excited that their bodies were trembling. Count Dracula, Poseidon, and the others all knew what it meant. The complete restoration of spiritual energy would have a great impact on the whole earth and the whole world. Bam! Bam! A pillar of spiritual chi that was almost condensed into a solid substance shot out from the black hole and rushed straight into the sky. Boom! In a flash, it shot straight into the clouds. It was as if it had poked a hole in the sky. The huge crater caused the sky to spin unceasingly, a violent rumble rang out, and the calm sky began to tremble in all directions, as if a stone had been thrown into a pond. Patriarch Penglai looked up, and all that was left in his eyes was the shocking scene. It was as if it was the work of a real god. Rumble, at this moment, the sky turned into 7 colors. Bam! Bam! Suddenly, at this moment, the whole earth seemed to be shaking. Light beams also shot into the sky from 3 different directions on Earth. They were located at the 3 extremes of the Earth. Bufang was now in the south. The rest were in the north, east, and west. They corresponded to the east, west, and south. At this moment, the whole earth seemed to wake up like a giant beast that had been dormant for a long time. The colorful sky was indescribably beautiful. Suddenly, it began to rain. Hualala's 7-colored rain fell from the sky at a rapid speed. It was sparse and connected to form a curtain. It was an extremely stimulating visual impact. Spiritual Chi Rain. The real spiritual Chi Rain. Patriarch Penglai burst out laughing. He spread his hands and felt the feeling of the rain falling on his body. I feel it. I feel the return of the immortals. Patriarch Penglai looked very excited. He took off his bamboo hat and bathed himself in the rain. The rainwater fell on his body and was absorbed by his pores, causing a dense mist to rise. Dense spiritual chi spread out in the void. Everyone spread out their hands. Their bodies and minds felt incomparably joyful. Although some people still didn't understand what was happening, this rain made them incomparably thirsty. Rumble, the earth's crust seemed to be moving. The tremors were very intense. The ordinary people who were drenched in the rain cried out in alarm. They discovered that various changes had occurred to their bodies. Some of them had sharp horns on their head. Some of them had a pair of goshawk wings on their backs. Some of them had streams of water swirling around their bodies. For a moment, the experts who were drenched in the rain all possessed extremely strange abilities. This was the awakening of their talents. Humans are the descendants of gods, and they have inherited their talents and abilities. However, in the long years of reproduction, these abilities and talents have fallen asleep in the depths of our blood, and they need stimulation to awaken. And this spiritual chi rain is the opportunity to awaken them. Poseidon's eyes were very deep. He burst out laughing. He no longer wanted to compete with Bufang for the immortal robe. With the recovery of spiritual energy, a great era was coming, and he, the sea god, needed to welcome the returning gods. Rumble! The water under Poseidon's feet exploded. It turned into a long bridge that stretched across the sea. He stood on the bridge. The water wriggled naturally, pushing him toward the west at high speed. Before long, he was gone. Patriarch Penglai gave Bufang a deep look, then stepped on an auspicious cloud and sped away, heading toward Hua. Dracula and the great wizard could not wait any longer, and they ran as fast as they could. The recovery of the spiritual chi rain made them understand that a real great era was coming. It seemed that those gods who had left Earth would begin to return and descend. Those heaven immortals and immortal kings who had left Earth would also return. The humans who had obtained superpowers were wild with joy. They were close to the point where the spiritual energy was gushing out, so they were the most direct beneficiaries. Everyone's face was filled with uncontrollable excitement. Hugo was also amazed. He felt that his cultivation base had grown, breaking through the shackles of an earth chi cultivator and rushing into the realm of a heaven chi cultivator. Was this the so-called fortune? Chief Luo, Xiao Ai, the monk, and the other superhumans were also amazed. Their superpowers began to grow rapidly as well. They thought it was a gift from God. Bufang stepped on the water. The recovery of spiritual energy had made everyone's surprise at Susanu's death disappear. Now, they were immersed in the joy of awakening their abilities. However, Bufang glanced at them, and his expression did not change much. Was it really worth celebrating to have obtained a superpower? The greater one's ability was, the more danger he would face. The more difficult it was for him to return to his ordinary life. These people were too young. He gave the huge pit a deep look. Bufang could feel a terrible aura emanating from the black hole. It was an oppressive feeling that came from another universe. He could not believe that the sleeping place of the artifact's spirit still hid so many secrets. The artifact's spirit had sealed one wormhole after another. Behind these wormholes seemed to be connected to vast universes. Now, the wormhole was open. Bufang did not know whether this was a good thing or not. However, Bufang felt that he had a responsibility to do something. He took a deep breath. Bufang fixed his eyes directly on the hole. Rumble! A violent rumble rang out. Then, all the humans, who were immersed in joy, woke up with a start and turned to look at the hole. Crunch! Crunch! It seemed that some terrible creature was about to crawl out of the hole. Roar! An invisible roar rang out, seeming to have the power to frighten the souls of everyone. What's that? It's so scary. So big. Is that a goat? Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at the huge goat's head poking out of the hole. The creature with a goat's body was covered with a dark aura. Is this the Grim Reaper from a small country's mythology? Chief Luo cried out involuntarily. As the director of the Jiangdong branch of the State Supernatural Bureau, his knowledge was far greater than that of ordinary people. In fact, as early as the emergence of superpowers, he had carefully studied the ancient myths and legends of many countries. He found that the gods in those myths and legends were actually quite similar to superhumans. They could be said to be stronger gods. In front of him, the huge creature that seemed to be about to crawl out of the hole had the head of a goat, the tail of a scorpion, and a body full of dark aura. It was the legendary Grim Reaper. Crunch. Crunch, Bufang's eyes flickered slightly. The creature that was about to crawl out of the hole had a very strong aura. It was even stronger than Poseidon, the god of the sea. Bufang raised his eyebrows. His divine sense suddenly spread out. Bufang's divine sense spread out and was shocked to find that the range it covered had increased. It seemed that because of the recovery of Earth, the pressure on his divine sense had decreased a lot. Naturally, Bufang didn't care about this. He loosened the divine sense chain that bound Vermilion Bird, stepped on the air, and shot out. In the distance, the humans returned from their joy and were shrouded in the aura of death. However, at this moment, they were shocked to find that Bufang had flown out and was hovering above the head of the huge creature that had crawled out of the hole. The huge goat's head was raised. Bufang didn't know which country's mythology this god was, but under Bufang's divine sense, he found that this guy had teleported here through a wormhole. Behind him, there were many teams lined up and waiting. Moreover, Bufang found that the teleportation point of the wormhole would change. In other words, the universe behind this creature had only existed on Earth for a short time. This creature had to crawl out as soon as possible. Bufang thought of many things. Perhaps the ancient mythological figures of Hua also arrived on Earth through teleportation from other universes? Bufang raised his eyebrows. It was a bold idea, but it was very possible. Perhaps, after this universe disappeared, the next universe to appear in the black hole would be connected to the universe where the ancient immortals of Hua went? The more Bufang thought about it, the more likely it was. Of course, the most important thing now was to get this creature with the goat's head back. Roar! Damn mortals! Your god of death wants to return to Earth. Get lost! The goat stared at Bufang with its scarlet eyes. It had the head of a goat, the body of a human, and the tail of a scorpion. Its aura was much stronger than that of Patriarch Penglai and the others. Its attitude was also much more arrogant. Get lost? The corner of Bu Fang's mouth twitched. If it weren't for the fact that this fellow only had a goat's head and was not a good ingredient, Bu Fang would have roasted a whole goat. But now Bu Fang took a deep breath. Then, he raised his Taotai arm. Boom! Bu Fang's punch contained a vast amount of spiritual energy as it smashed down toward the goat's head. Stupid mortal! Get lost! The goat-headed creature looked at Bu Fang with disdain. It raised its head and aimed its sharp horn at Bu Fang. All of a sudden, the goat's horn collided with Bu Fang's fist. The contrast was very strong. In front of this fiend god, Bu Fang was like a fly. But when the fist smashed down, bam! The goat's horn shattered and cracked. A tremendous force exploded out, like the rumbling of a star. The whole earth seemed to be shaking. The fiend god's head seemed to have been smashed to pieces. The tremendous force pushed its body, which was halfway out of the hole, back into the hole. No. I'll be back. When the goat's head was shoved back into the hole, it let out an unwilling roar. Everyone was dumbfounded. Chief Luo was shaking all over. That was the god of death in the myth of a small country, a real god. How could it be beaten back by Bu Fang? Bu Fang clapped his hands. He looked at the black hole, which had calmed down a little. He exhaled. What he did could only make the black hole stop for a while, and did not have much effect on the overall situation. But at least, Bu Fang had tried his best. After all, he was the one who created the black hole. In the distance, a loud and clear bird cry resounded through the air. Bu Fang froze. He turned his head to look. He saw the vermilion bird burst into flames. The next moment, she broke free from Bu Fang's divine sense, spread her wings, turned into a vermilion bird, and sped away into the distance. It looked like she was trying to escape. The corner of Bu Fang's mouth twitched. Let's get out of here. It's not safe here anymore. Bu Fang glanced at the crowd and said. Then, he stepped into the void and chased after the vermilion bird. Chief Luo and the others were stunned. Yugo was even more confused. The big flaming red bird that had appeared just now, that seems to be the divine beast guarding the south in Hua's myth? The vermilion bird? Yugo said in a daze. Rumble, a rumbling sound came from the black hole. Mighty spiritual energy kept gushing out of it. After what had just happened, everyone knew that danger was approaching. So, they hurriedly ran toward the jewel. When they boarded the ship, it whistled and sailed toward the coast of Hua. Everyone on the ship understood. The world was about to change. However, they didn't expect that. The ship had not gone far when they witnessed the changes in the world. Chapter 16-17. Shrouded in crimson flames, she turned into a vermilion bird and sped away into the distance. Perhaps she was afraid of Bu Fang, or perhaps she wanted to break free from the shackles. So, she flapped her wings and sped away. However, Bu Fang hadn't forgotten what the Qilin had said. If he wanted to awaken Mulberry's consciousness, he had to conquer her. How? For a chef, there was no better way to conquer someone than with a dish. The vermilion bird cried, spread her wings, and soared high into the sky. However, Bu Fang was faster. After all, Bu Fang's strength was there for all to see. The vermilion bird cried and sped toward the coastline like a ball of fire. Below it was the jewel. With one step, Bu Fang landed in front of the vermilion bird. His divine sense shot out again and directly grabbed Mulberry, who had turned into the vermilion bird. In fact, the vermilion bird was very strong. In Bu Fang's senses, she was much stronger than Patriarch Penglai. However, when facing Bu Fang, she didn't dare to fight back. Perhaps this was the bond between them. The vermilion bird was caught. With the rope tied, the vermilion bird transformed back into Mulberry. Her fiery red hair spread out, and she blinked her big eyes at Bu Fang. Pursing her red lips, she cried, "Ah, ah, ah!" Since she couldn't run away, she could only choose to act cute. Of course, her act was ineffective against Bu Fang. Grabbing Mulberry, he landed on the jewel and found some clothes for her to change into. Bufang began to think about how to conquer her. Standing at the prow of the ship, he looked into the distance. Bufang seemed to sense the aura of other artifact spirits. The other spiritual energy seals should have been broken as well. Bufang focused his eyes. The other spiritual energy seals have been broken. I wonder where the god of cooking sets are. Bufang took a deep breath and exhaled. In any case, what Bufang needed to do next was to find and assemble the god of cooking set. However, Bufang had a headache. If the vermilion bird Fusang was like this, would the other artifact spirits be the same? Black tortoise, white tiger, and Nicholas, could it be that he had to conquer it himself? Sigh. Why is it so hard to be a chef? Do, the steam whistle sounded. The ship was sailing at full speed on the sea. A rainbow-colored rain of spiritual energy continued to fall from the sky. The world seemed to be changing under the washing of the rain. Rumble, dark clouds were gathering in the sky. Thunder continued to explode. It seemed like a powerful being had descended. The ship continued to travel for an unknown amount of time. Everyone's faces were filled with terror and a strange expression on this day. The spiritual chi rain was still pattering down. Bufang lay leisurely on the deck of the ship, while Vermilion Bird sat beside him, tied up. She looked aggrieved. She stared at Bufang with her big eyes and continued to act cute. It was useless, but she never got tired of it. These days, Bufang had tried to cook some dishes to conquer her, but none of them seemed to work. Senior. All of a sudden, Yu Gu ran out of the cabin in horror, followed by Chief Luo, Xiao Ai, and the others. The captain of the Jewel, a foreigner with thick eyebrows and big eyes, was also there. What's wrong? Bufang opened his sleepy eyes. Bufang was a man who liked to find silence in the midst of chaos. To put it simply, he liked to be lazy. Even though he knew that the world had changed drastically, he was still very calm. In fact, everyone on the ship had been crazy for a long time. Some of them could not even sleep at night. Earth seems to have grown bigger. Yugo looked at Bufang in horror and swallowed. Huh! Bufang gave Yugo a puzzled look. Under normal circumstances, we should be able to reach China's coastline in a day, but it's been so long, and we haven't arrived yet. Yugo said. He had a bold idea. Earth must have grown bigger, so our journey back home has become much longer. Yugo seemed a little incredulous. The area of Earth could actually grow bigger. What kind of concept was that? That's normal. The increase in the concentration of spiritual energy has caused a great change in the world. The original Earth could not support this amount of spiritual energy, so after absorbing it, Earth began to grow bigger and expand. Bufang yawned. This was normal, and Bufang thought they all knew. Earth has grown bigger. Bigger, Yugo was dumbfounded. Behind him, Chief Luo, the monk, and the others also gasped. The foreign captain, on the other hand, had an unsightly look on his face. The area of Earth had grown bigger, and the Jewel did not have enough fuel to support its return to the port. In this regard, Bufang also thought of a solution. He patted Xiaopi on the head, and the latter dove into the sea. A moment later, a giant whale leaped out of the sea. Water vapor gushed out of its pores. Under Xiaopi's command, it dragged the Jewel toward the coast at high speed. Everyone on the ship also experienced the feeling of racing a ship. They soon reached the coast. After disembarking from the Jewel, Bufang did not say goodbye to them. He took Vermilion Bird and left. Yugo and the others took deep breaths as they watched Bufang leave. Meanwhile, Chief Luo contacted the headquarters and began to learn about the changes in the world. Yugo hurried back to the immortal island of Penglai. They all knew that something big was about to happen on Earth. Bufang walked on the street. As he walked in the city, the feeling became more and more obvious. The roads in the city had become much wider, and the gaps between houses had been lengthened. It was as if the whole ground had been stretched out like plasticine. This was the change brought about by the recovery of spiritual energy. However, the impact of this change on society was not that great. Pedestrians hurried along the street. Many people were nervous and busy. Most people were still running around for survival. Bufang looked at Vermilion Bird, who followed him obediently, and raised his eyebrows. If he wanted to conquer her, he would have to cater to her preferences. "What do you like to eat?" Bufang asked Vermilion Bird. Vermilion Bird blinked at Bufang. "Do you like vegetables or meat?" Bufang continued to ask. You're a bird. Do you like to eat bugs?" Bufang asked after thinking for a moment. Vermilion Bird blinked. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. He raised his hand and hit her on the forehead with a hammer. "Speak human language," Bufang said expressionlessly. Vermilion Bird's face stiffened. "I want to eat a dragon." She opened her mouth. It was still Fusang's familiar voice. "Dragon? You want to eat Nicholas the handsome dragon? What grudge do you have against him?" Bufang was taken aback. "We're both artifact spirits. Why make things difficult for them?" She rolled her eyes. She couldn't communicate with him anymore. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. He understood what she meant. If she wanted to eat a dragon, he would go find one. On the immortal island of Penglai. On an island shrouded in immortal energy, Patriarch Penglai looked excitedly at the sky. A few old men clad in fluttering robes were waiting beside Patriarch Penglai. The spiritual energy sealing point in Siberia is occupied by the forces of the Western Church. "I can't believe a black pot appeared there," a red-faced old man said, somewhat speechless. A red-faced old man said somewhat speechlessly. He had failed in the battle for the spiritual chi sealing point. "A black pot? What's so strange about that? I saw a stove in the spiritual energy sealing point in the Dead Sea. AF * King Stove." Another old man said, speechless. "I'm also wondering why the spiritual energy sealing point only contains cooking utensils used by chef. Could it be that an immortal emperor who loves to cook sealed his cooking utensils there?" They talked among themselves. Suddenly, the altar on it began to glow. Patriarch Penglai and the others became excited as they looked at the altar. "The immortals have returned." All the chi cultivators on Penglai Island knelt down to welcome the creatures that were about to appear on the altar. Rumbling sounds rang out over the altar. There seemed to be colorful lights connecting them. In the next moment, the 7-colored brilliance turned into a rainbow bridge. One corner of the rainbow bridge seemed to be connected to a chaotic land. None of the chi cultivators on Penglai Island dared to look up. "Welcome, exalted immortals." All the disciples of Penglai Immortal Island greeted him respectfully. On the rainbow bridge, silver bells rang, immortal music played, and clusters of flowers appeared, looking gorgeous and enchanting. One fairy maiden after another, clad in colorful immortal dresses, walked out of the bridge on both sides, their feet bare and their petals scattered. The middle of the rainbow bridge was shrouded in auspicious clouds. Above the auspicious clouds, sage-like immortals floated out of it. The immortals came in different shape. Some carried swords, some held knives, some held horsetail whisks, some rode leopards, and some carried pagodas. All kinds of immortals walked out of the rainbow bridge. Patriarch Penglai was very excited. Many immortals were existences in myths and legends, but at this moment they had really appeared. However, after those immortals walked out of the rainbow bridge, they stood on both sides as if an immortal court had arrived. At this moment, on the rainbow bridge, an old man wearing a black brocade robe embroidered with golden patterns flew out of the rainbow bridge while sitting on an auspicious cloud. A golden halo was hovering behind his head. "Welcome, Sect Master." Patriarch Penglai's face became more and more excited. When he saw this supreme existence, he bowed his head deeply. In the west, on top of a towering mountain, there was a temple. The seawater churned, then suddenly solidified and turned into a human figure. Holding the trident in his hand, Poseidon stared at the sky, which was filled with thunder and lightning. A look of hope emerged on his face. Over there, a rainbow bridge of 7 colors appeared. From it, one barefoot god after another walked out. Thousands of rays of light shone brilliantly, and their divine power descended upon the world. The gods have returned. Poseidon was very excited. Thunder rumbled. A figure stepped on lightning and walked out from it. He was extremely handsome. At this moment, all kinds of gods were descending from every corner of the world. There were also all kinds of strange creatures crawling out of the huge black hole. If there were scholars who specialized in mythology, they might be able to recognize that these creatures that crawled out of the black hole were actually the gods that were recorded in the records of various countries. The arrival of the gods had caused the spiritual energy on Earth to become even denser, causing the spiritual energy to become extremely restless. The living beings on Earth respectfully greeted these gods. They were looking forward to the oracle of the gods. However, to everyone's surprise, the first thing these gods said was about the treasures that had appeared in the spiritual energy sealing point. The gods had decreed that they must seize the divine artifacts that sealed Earth's spiritual energy at all cost. As soon as the news came out, the whole Earth was boiling again. Bufang did not know that the god of cooking Set had become the target of the gods who had just descended from all over the world. At this moment, he was thinking about how to find a dragon. Vermilion Bird had a strong taste. She wanted to eat dragon meat, but the dragon meat in the system's storage space had long been used up. The heaven and earth farmland could not be opened, and the top-grade dragon meat inside could not be used. Therefore, Bufang could only consider finding a dragon on Earth and making it into a dish. However, how to find a dragon was a problem. It was late at night. The sky was dark, and only the bright moon hung in the sky, shining brightly. Bufang suddenly stopped walking. He looked up at the sky. A 7-colored light suddenly appeared in the sky above the city. The light fell and enveloped thousands of miles. The people in the city were already in an uproar. Bufang, on the other hand, let out a soft cry of surprise. Within the brilliance, figures descended one after another. Immortal energy rose from those figures, and there were phoenixes and silver dragons hovering at. Silver dragons? Bufang's eyes suddenly lit up. Chapter 16-18. Bufang looked at the figures falling from the sky. The appearance of the silhouette had already caused a commotion in the city. Everyone raised their heads and exclaimed in surprise when they saw that scene. Colorful light, the auspicious sign of a dragon and a phoenix. This was the sign of the arrival of immortals. Ordinary people could also sense the changes in the world. After all, the distance between work and home had increased several times. They could feel it even with their eyes closed. The various countries also spread the news of the special ability users to their people. This news caused a great response among the people. No one expected that the talk of immortals would become a reality. The superhuman organization in Jiangdong received the news immediately. Chief Luo led his team of superhumans and rushed toward the location where the immortals were descending. Helicopters, armored vehicles, and other means of transportation were used. Chief Luo sat in the armored vehicle with a worried look on his face. The main reason was that the great changes in the current era were not good for people. There were too many almighty beings, and once some crazy almighty beings appeared, it would be a disaster for ordinary people. The power of technology was too weak in front of these people. Fortunately, because of the recovery of spiritual energy. Scientists, on the other hand, had found a way to integrate spiritual energy into weapons. These spiritual weapons were specifically used to deal with the so-called immortals and the like. In fact, in Chief Luo's opinion, these so-called immortals were just some powerful superhumans. Those superhumans had been hiding somewhere before, but now that the world had awakened, they had come out to stir up trouble. It's a dragon! Heavens! There really are dragons in the world! Not just dragons. There are also phoenixes. This is amazing! There really are immortals in the world! Everyone was exclaiming. They were extremely shocked. pointing at the immortals in the sky, who were blooming with colorful light and talking about them. For a moment, photos, videos, and images were all spread on the internet. The internet was in an uproar. It took Chief Luo and his superhuman team members a great deal of effort to isolate the civilians and squeeze into the battlefield. However, when he saw the scene on the battlefield, Chief Luo was stunned. Xiao Ai, who was following behind him, also had her mouth wide open. Chief Luo. It's Senior. The small eyes under Xiao Ai's glasses were quite cute and full of excitement. After what happened on the jewel, Xiao Ai had absolute faith in Bufang. If it weren't for Bufang, she would have been dead by now. So now, like you go, he called Bufang Senior. She felt that Bufang deserved to be called that. Senior, are you confronting an immortal? That's an immortal. Senior, you must be in trouble. Xiao Ai looked at the situation with a worried expression on her face. Chief Luo pursed his lips and didn't say anything. Instead, he gestured to the members of the Special Abilities Bureau to prepare for battle. Immortals were just things of legends, and it was unknown whether they were kind to the people. The reason for the existence of the Special Abilities Bureau was to protect the people. So, he had to be fully prepared. However, at least there was one thing that Bufang would not harm the people. Chief Luo could feel it. The corners of Bufang's mouth curled up slightly. He did not expect that there would be ingredients delivered to his doorstep by himself. Immortals? What were immortals? In Bufang's eyes, there were only ingredient: a silver dragon and a colorful phoenix. As soon as this mythical scene appeared, an ordinary person would have knelt on the ground and kowtowed to pray for blessings. However, Bufang wasn't like that. Instead, he revealed a look of excitement. His eyes gleamed as he stared at the silver dragon. He was just worried that there was no place to catch a dragon, and now a dragon had delivered itself to him. Buzz, there were a total of 4 immortals standing on auspicious clouds. 2 of them were sage-like, while the other 2 were clad in silver armor and looked like divine generals of the heaven. Found it, an old man in a Taoist robe stroked his white beard and chuckled. Yes, I didn't expect a primitive divine artifact to be right under our noses. This saves us a lot of trouble. Stepping on the silver dragon, an armored immortal said softly. We returned to Earth from the primitive universe. We were guided by the saints, so these divine artifacts are destined to be ours. The old man's Taoist robe fluttered in the wind. His gaze swept across the entire city. When he saw the surprised and respectful citizens, his face twitched slightly and showed a disdainful smile. So many years have passed, but these mortals haven't changed. They're still as ignorant as ever. The old man shook his head. Don't talk nonsense, true immortal. The will of the people is also related to the true meaning of cultivation for us immortals, another old man in a white immortal robe said, glancing at the old man. That's the true meaning of cultivation for us in the primordial era. We've created a world in the primitive universe and no longer need such primitive methods of cultivation. I can kill these ignorant citizens with a wave of my hand. The heavenly Tao of the ancestral planet won't affect us either, the old man said with a smile. The other immortals frowned. Although they did not agree, they did not refute it. Clearly, the old man was speaking the truth. All right, that's enough chatting. Let's move quickly. The sect master is still waiting, the old man said. In the next moment, his gaze fell on Bufang. He looked down at Bufang as if he was looking at a primitive mortal. Who goes there? An innocent man will get into trouble because of his wealth. Such a divine artifact is not something mortals like you can possess. Hand it over now, and I'll spare your life, the old man scolded. The old man spoke. It was as if the whole city was shaking. The majestic and supreme voice continued to resound. The people down below boiled with excitement. The immortal had spoken. Chief Luo and the others tensed up as well. Is that a true dragon? Bufang asked, licking his lips as he looked at the proud old man. Everyone was taken aback when they heard the question. The old man couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Of course it's a true dragon. The armored immortal standing on the silver dragon proudly said. The silver dragon seemed to understand the armored immortal's words. It raised its head and roared. The dragon's roar shook the heavens. When the people down below heard the dragon's roar, they knelt on the ground in fear. Damn it! It's a true dragon. It's not a special effect. I thought it was a special effect, but it's really a dragon. How frightening! It's a little scary. Can a dragon eat a man? The people down below were shivering with fear. Click, click, click. The sound of camera shutters rang out incessantly. It's good that it's a true dragon. The corners of Bu Fang's mouth curved upward. The next moment, he stomped his foot on the ground. With a rumbling sound, a gust of wind blew across the ground. Bu Fang's figure shot up into the sky, clenching his fists as he charged toward the true dragon. How dare you! The armored general bellowed. Immortal energy surged around him, and a curved, snake-shaped sword fell into his hand. Then, he swung it toward Bu Fang. The silver dragon also opened its mouth and spewed out silver flames. Rumble, a rumbling sound spread out. The people down below were stunned. This dreamlike scene completely frightened them. Boom! The sword light and the dragon's breath instantly engulfed Bu Fang. Ha ha! What a foolish mortal! You only know how to act recklessly. The old man flicked his horsetail whisk and smiled faintly. His voice was full of disdain. They were lofty immortals, and yet Bu Fang dared to attack them. It should be noted that they were human immortals. They were not existences that mortals could resist. Evacuate the crowd. Chief Luo's pupils constricted as soon as he saw the battle break out. He roared. The superhumans of the State Supernatural Bureau hurriedly took action. As the dragon's breath fell, the ground burst into flames. The people were so frightened that they fled in a hurry. These so-called immortals did not care about the lives of the mortals down below. Boom! The flames exploded. Bu Fang shot up into the sky. He was unscathed. The armored general's pupils constricted. Silver dragon, attack! He bellowed, his face grave. The snake-shaped sword slashed out, turning into thousands of sword beams. Boom! 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 The sword chi slashed at the surrounding high-rise buildings, causing the glass on the buildings to shatter one after another. Bu Fang furrowed his brows and glanced at the fleeing crowd. Then, he turned to the four immortals and breathed a sigh of relief. The silver dragon struck out with its claw, which instantly enveloped Bu Fang with immortal energy swirling around it. The sword beams and the dragon claw fell at the same time. This mortal is really arrogant. His aura doesn't look very strong, but he dares to fight the Heavenly Court's divine general head-on. In the distance, the three immortals looked as if they were watching a good show. As for the shockwaves, they did not care at all. Boom! When the sword beams and the dragon claw smashed into Bu Fang, the corners of the divine general's mouth curved upward slightly. Mortals were, after all, mortals. Tear him to pieces. This is your dinner. Silver dragon, the divine general said, smiling. He was full of confidence. Suddenly his eyes narrowed. He heard the sound of bones breaking. The silver dragon let out a miserable howl. The claws of the silver dragon under his feet exploded and turned into a bloody mist. When the sword beam struck Bu Fang, they only produced a clanging sound. What's going on? The divine general froze. However, Bu Fang did not give him time to recover. He jumped up and landed on the silver dragon's back. As for the divine general, he was sent flying away by a slap from Bu Fang. It's a true dragon. Looks like we can get our hands on the dragon meat, Bu Fang said. He muttered to himself, but the silver dragon beneath his feet shuddered. The divine general was furious. Put down my dragon! Holding the snake-shaped sword, the divine general forced Bu Fang to come to him. The sword slashed down, and immortal light shone in all directions. Bufang gave him an indifferent look. Grabbing the silver dragon's horn, he flew up into the sky. Under Bufang's despotic power, the silver dragon could only follow him. If it didn't fly, its horn would be broken. The three immortals who were watching were shocked. How could this mortal be so fierce? Right? This mortal has a divine artifact that can seal the spiritual energy on Earth. We can't underestimate him. Let's fight him together. The three immortals exchanged a look. One by one, they rushed into the sky. The four immortals attacked at the same time. Four immortals fighting a mortal? At this moment, the breathing of the crowd below had quickened. The news was spreading on the internet. Countless people were watching closely. Chief Luo and Xiao Ai stared at the sky. Chief Luo. Senior should win. Senior can defeat Susanoo of Sakura Island with one punch. Xiao Ai said nervously. Chief Luo was silent. How could Susanoo of Sakura Island compare to these four immortals? According to the information he received, the weakest immortal who had entered Earth was stronger than the patriarch of the immortal island of Penglai. Patriarch Penglai was a real immortal, an Earth immortal. He was an existence that surpassed SS-class superhumans. It would be fine if there was only one immortal, but there were four of them. Senior was in danger. Chief Luo heaved a long sigh. Suddenly in the sky the dragon and the phoenix screamed miserably. Then a rumble echoed out. A figure fell from the sky. Smashing the ground, shattering it, the man who fell was not Bufang, but the old man in a Taoist robe who had ruled the world with the air of a transcendent being. Chief Luo's face stiffened. The slap came too fast, like a tornado. Chapter 1619. No one had expected that it would be the sage-like old man in a Taoist robe who fell. The people present were stunned. How could they not be curious about a fight between immortals? Many people watched curiously from a distance. The four immortals in the sky were extremely ethereal. They stood on auspicious clouds and looked like immortals. Everyone thought that they were supreme and invincible beings. In the end, the development of things was completely beyond their expectations. In just a short while, the old man fell from the sky and smashed into the ground, shattering it. Chief Luo and Xiao Ai's eyes lit up. Sure enough, Senior was still his senior. Boom, boom. Two more figures fell. They were the other two immortals. Their sage-like demeanor had long since disappeared, and now they looked extremely wretched. The immortals got up from the ground, somewhat confused. They did not seem to understand why Bufang could suppress them. A miserable scream rang out. The dragon-riding divine general fell from the sky. The armor on his body was already riddled with holes, and it was constantly shattering. His eyes had turned scarlet red. Everyone could not help but exclaim. This was so exciting. He was fighting against four immortals alone, and he had actually suppressed them so badly. He was so handsome. All the people were extremely excited. The old man in the Taoist robe was somewhat violent. They had returned from the primitive universe and wanted to be the patriarchs of Earth, but they were suppressed by a mortal. The mortal's aura was clearly very weak, but he had beaten them so hard that they could not fight back. Clouds shrouded the sky. The silver dragon's body was faintly visible, and it let out a miserable cry. The divine general's face was pale, and his pupils constricted. That mortal has a divine artifact that has sealed a quarter of Earth's spiritual energy. It's normal that we're no match for him. The immortal-robed old man took a deep breath. As they thought about this, their hearts became even greedier. No wonder the sect leader values the divine artifact so much. It's indeed extraordinary. It can actually give a mortal the power to fight against us. The old man was even more greedy. With a flip of his hand, a sword appeared in it. This is one of the sect leader's 4 swords. This sword will definitely be able to kill that demon and seize the divine weapon. In the distance, the two divine generals also looked over. Yes. Use it quickly. Hurry up and save my silver dragon. The immortal general was furious. The next moment, the old man's eyes narrowed, and he blew out a mouthful of immortal chi. The sword in his hand soared into the sky. Rumble, the moment the sword appeared. The entire Jiangdong city was shaking, and the gravel on the ground kept rolling. Many tall buildings shook violently as if they were about to collapse at any time. Chief Luo, Xiao Ai, and many other arcanists' faces changed drastically, and their faces were filled with horror. They could sense a terrifying aura from the sword in the old man's hand. What is that? Xiao Ai's heart trembled. She looked at the computer in her hand. Poochie! The computer's screen exploded and sparks flew everywhere. This caused her face to turn even paler. The spiritual energy on the sword had already exceeded the range that the computer could detect. Chief Luo sucked in a breath of cold air and roared at the superhumans behind him. Quick! Evacuate the crowd! Get everyone out of here! Chief Luo's face was full of terror. The superhumans immediately moved out. In the distance, the mortals who were watching the show also felt terrified. Immediately, they couldn't be bothered to watch the show anymore. They fled in all directions as if they had gone mad. This demon must die. The old man in the Taoist robe was extremely fanatical. Looking at the green sword in his hand, he felt his mind become clear. Then, he suddenly let go of it. The sword whistled through the air and shot toward Bufang in the sky. Although it was only a simulation, it had a portion of the sect leader's immortal sword's power. Mortals could not stop it, and even heaven immortals could not. The four superhumans never thought that they would be forced by Bufang to use such a trick. The sect leader's sword had a famous name in the primitive universe. The Four Immortal Swords. It was a green sword, and its name was Immortal Extermination. Boom! A green sword soared into the sky. Blasts of air swept out in all directions. Half of Jiangdong City was trembling, and the roads were cracking. There seemed to be steam rising from the cracks. The sword energy was dazzling like the sun in the dark night, bright and dazzling. In the sky, Bufang was holding a beast in each hand. In his left hand was a colorful phoenix, and in his right was a silver dragon. Both the phoenix and the dragon's aura were weak. In ancient myths, dragons and phoenixes represented auspiciousness. However, in Bufang's eyes, these two beasts were filled with hostility and bloodlust. In Bufang's god of cooking's eye, these dragons and phoenixes were incompatible with auspiciousness. That was why Bufang wanted to kill them. They were beasts that had eaten humans. If they were real auspicious beasts, Bufang would not have killed them. The phoenix screamed miserably, but its eyes were filled with ferocity. Then, Bufang shoved it into the system's storage space. As for the silver dragon, Bufang was going to cook it on the spot. However, just as Bufang was about to make his move, a beam of sword energy broke through the clouds from below, and the air seemed to explode. The sword energy was terrifying, Bufang raised his eyebrows, and a look of surprise flashed in his eyes. The power of the sword was extraordinary. It was almost as strong as the strike of a high-grade god in the chaotic universe. In fact, after so many days, Bufang had a clear understanding of the strength levels of the immortals on Earth and those in the chaotic universe. There was no need to mention Earth immortals. Human immortals were equivalent to demigods in the chaotic universe, while heaven immortals were equivalent to real gods. Above them were immortal kings and immortal emperors, which corresponded to god kings and god emperors. Of course, there might be a slight difference in strength, but the difference would not be too obvious. As for whether immortal kings or god kings were stronger, Bufang did not know. At this moment, the sword energy whistling up from below made Bufang feel that it was powerful enough to kill ordinary heaven immortals. Its power was almost equal to the attack of a high-grade god. Bufang held the silver dragon with one hand. At this moment, The silver dragon was lying limply in Bu Fang's hand like a loach that had lost its life. The sword whistled through the air. A clanging sound rang out. Boiling immortal energy came with a terrible sharpness. Bu Fang raised his eyebrows slightly. It's not bad, but it's a pity, it's just a fake. The corner of Bu Fang's mouth twitched slightly. Rumble! A dazzling light burst out of the god of cooking's eye, which seemed to be able to see through heaven and earth. The movement of his hand holding the silver dragon did not slow down. Slash! The dragon tendon was pulled out and the dragon's skin was peeled off. With a flick of Bu Fang's finger, the silver divine flame burst into a blaze and engulfed the whole dragon in a flash. Crackle! The silver dragon was roasted in a flash, and a rich meaty aroma began to drift between heaven and earth. Everyone was dumbfounded. The four immortals were dumbstruck. The divine general's heart ached and he was furious. That damned evil man! How dare he cook my silver dragon? His silver dragon was a demon dragon. In the primitive universe, it had devoured countless mortals. Its strength was no weaker than ordinary immortals, and it had followed him to conquer the primitive universe. But now, the silver dragon was cooked by a mere demon. Chief Luo and Xiao Ai sucked in cold breath. Many people could not believe what they saw. Senior is too fierce. That's a dragon. Senior roasted it just like that? It smells so good. I wonder if roasted dragon meat tastes good. I heard that dragon meat is very nutritious. Chief Luo, Xiao Ai, and the other superhumans sucked in cold breath. Swish! The immortal exterminating sword was closing in on Bu Fang. It was less than an inch away from Bu Fang. Bu Fang's face was expressionless. He was still roasting the silver dragon. Die! The old man in the Taoist robe bellowed, his beard and hair standing on end. The divine general was furious. Kill him! The eyes of the old man and the other divine general were also shining brightly. The power of the immortal exterminating sword was extraordinary. However, Bu Fang did not even frown. Rumble! The immortal exterminating sword drew a terrible arc of sword light and stabbed Bu Fang's chest. In a flash, a gust of wind blew. The clouds in the sky were blown away, revealing Bu Fang's figure. His vermilion robe, alternating between red and white, fluttered in the wind. The sword stabbed Bu Fang's chest. The tip of the sword kept surging with sword light. However, no matter how the sword energy of the immortal exterminating sword moved, it could not move an inch forward, nor did it cause any harm to Bu Fang's body. If the original sword was here, it might be a threat, but it's just an imitation. Bu Fang twitched the corner of his mouth. With one hand, he roasted the silver dragon. With the other, he grabbed the immortal exterminating sword. Light surged on his Taotai arm, and the energies of yin and yang circulated. With a squelch, the trump card of the four immortals, the so-called clone of the sect leader's immortal artifact, was crushed by Bu Fang. The blue light exploded. It turned into sword fragments that littered the ground. The four immortals were dumbstruck, retreating in disbelief. The face of the old man in the Taoist robe, who controlled the immortal sword, was flushed. Blood spurted from his mouth, as if he had been struck by a terrible force, and he was sent flying backward. The three immortals hurried to catch him, their eyes filled with shock. The immortal exterminating sword had been crushed. That was the clone of the sect leader's immortal artifact. Even heaven immortals would retreat when they saw it. This demon actually crushed the immortal sword with his bare hands. That's a Tao law. No, it's not a Tao law. This evil man is not from the ancestral planet. With a look of disbelief on his face, the old man in the Taoist robe suddenly roared. In the sky, Bu Fang crushed the immortal exterminating sword, as if he had just crushed something insignificant. He didn't seem to mind it at all. He waved his hand. The silver dragon burned and soared into the sky. Under the control of Bu Fang's divine sense, it shrank into a ball. Bu Fang spread his hands, manipulating the broken pieces of the immortal exterminating sword. The pieces of the sword whistled as they flew out, opening many wounds on the silver dragon's body. The wounds split open and widened in an instant, exposing the white and tender flesh. Oil flowed out of it, and the dragon meat was snow-white and fragrant. Down below, Vermilion Bird's mouth was wide open, drooling. She was very excited. The people around her sucked in their breath. Heavens! He's really roasting the dragon as an ingredient. With a thought in his mind, seasonings flew out of the system's storage space and sprinkled some powder on the meat. The aroma of the dragon meat became more alluring and rich. The divine general was so angry that he almost vomited blood. This evil man has gone too far. Mulberry, here's your dragon meat. In the sky, Bufang's faint voice rang out. The Vermilion Bird Mulberry's eyes immediately lit up. Then she stomped her long white legs on the ground. Bam! The ground exploded in an instant. In an instant, Mulberry's figure soared into the sky. The four immortals and the people around them were shocked. This woman also had such divine power. The next moment, something even more shocking happened. The woman with fiery red hair transformed in the wind. Her robe exploded into pieces, revealing her fair and tender skin. Fire-like feathers grew out of her body. Then, a huge flaming vermilion bird appeared. With a cry, it spread its wings and soared into the sky. It soared up. The vermilion bird's eyes were full of excitement, and her mouth was wide open. Bufang grabbed the roasted silver dragon meat and threw it. The oily silver dragon flew toward the vermilion bird. The vermilion bird spread its wings, and its cry soared into the sky. Then, it held the silver dragon in its mouth, as if it was holding a bug. The vermilion bird's body was extremely huge. Compared to it, the silver dragon was indeed like a bug. The four divine beasts. The southern flame vermilion bird. The four immortals were terrified. In the primitive universe, the four divine beasts were supreme existences. They were existences comparable to immortal emperors. How could the vermilion bird appear here? Gulp. The silver dragon meat was swallowed. In the sky, the corners of Bufang's mouth twitched slightly. All the people down below were shocked and dumbfounded. After eating the silver dragon, the vermilion bird seemed to have achieved a qualitative sublimation. Buzz Bufang's eyes, which were very strange to him, suddenly became familiar. The vermilion bird opened its mouth and let out a cry. The next moment, it turned into a beam of fire and burrowed into Bufang's forehead. Bam! 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 The vermilion robe on Bufang's body flapped noisily. At this moment, Bufang's aura suddenly expanded. The god of cooking's eye opened. Bufang's aura rose steadily, and a beam of light soared into the sky. It completely illuminated the dark night. His aura began to twirl. At this moment, Bufang's aura, which was incompatible with Earth, became harmonious. Even though Bufang's aura was completely unleashed now, it did not seem to affect him. Perhaps it was because the spiritual energy the vermilion bird breathed came from a quarter of Earth's spiritual energy. In his spirit sea, the vermilion bird returned. As the flame spread, the spirit sea began to boil. At this moment, Bufang's divine sense was completely sublimated. The four immortals down below began to tremble. What a terrible aura! An immortal king! This evil man is actually an immortal king. Run! The four immortals did not hesitate. They turned, stepped on auspicious clouds, and were about to fly into the sky and flee. Bufang's body withstood the beam of light that soared into the sky. He raised his head and looked at the boundless void. It was as if he had sensed a supreme will, and the pressure that the supreme will was exerting on him had weakened significantly. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched slightly. Then, he turned to look at the four immortals who were fleeing frantically. He held up a finger. As his finger fell, the four immortals howled miserably. Accompanied by their cries, their bodies were ground to pieces. How could these human immortals resist Bufang, who had recovered some of his strength. He could kill them with one breath. On the immortal island of Penglai, the moment Bufang killed the 4 immortals, an expert sitting cross-legged on a cloud with a 7-colored halo behind his head slowly opened his eyes and let out a soft cry of surprise. Chapter 1620. At this moment, the air became much quieter. Everyone on the ground was dumbstruck, their mouths wide open and their faces full of horror. They stared blankly at the empty ground. There were 4 immortals there, but with just a touch of Bufang's finger, they had disappeared in an instant. What kind of technique was this? How could he kill immortals as easily as wiping away dust? Who exactly was this senior? Chief Luo's legs were shaking. Even though he was experienced and knowledgeable, he still felt like he was dreaming. He could not tell who Bufang was. He was good at cooking, and his fighting prowess was so terrifying. When he first met Bufang, he thought Bufang was just an ordinary man, but that was not the case. Not only was Bufang not an ordinary man, but he was also a terrifying existence with extraordinary fighting prowess. Xiao Ai clenched her fists excitedly. She had no feelings for those immortals. Those so-called immortals looked at them as if they were looking at ants. That kind of high and mighty gaze made Xiao Ai feel disgusted from the bottom of her heart. However, Xiao Ai's admiration for Bufang was growing. Senior is so handsome. Retracting his aura, Bufang descended from the sky and landed steadily on the ground. Bufang's expression was the same as ever, as if killing an immortal was no different from wiping away dust. His calmness amazed everyone. Senior, just like Xiao Ai, Chief Luo called Bufang Senior. With Bufang's current strength, he deserved such a title. In his opinion, Bufang might be an antique who had crawled out of some place. Otherwise, how could he have such fighting prowess? In today's era of spiritual energy recovery and great changes in the world, even superhumans could not stir up much trouble. Only antiques like Bufang could. Bufang clasped his hands behind his back, his vermilion robe looking very ordinary. Bufang glanced indifferently at Chief Luo, who was feverish and nervous in the distance. These so-called immortals are not here with good intentions. Be careful, Bufang reminded him. Chief Luo was already aware of this. After all, those immortals were wantonly fighting in the city and did not care about human lives at all. This made Chief Luo feel an inexplicable anger. Bufang nodded. That was all he could say. As for what Chief Luo and the others did, Bufang didn't care. In reality, the power of those immortals far exceeded that of the mortals present. If the immortals were to attack without restraint, it would be a disaster for the entire world. Senior, are you going to look for other artifacts now? Just as Bufang was about to turn around and leave, Xiao Ai, whose eyes were shining, suddenly opened her mouth and said to Bufang. Bufang paused. He knew that the divine artifact Xiao Ai mentioned was the god of cooking set. The artifact spirits of the god of cooking sets were distributed all over the world. The vermilion robe, for example, was located in the South Sea. Moreover, as the seal was broken, it was likely that the god of cooking set had fallen into the hands of various powers. Of course, Bufang couldn't just watch the god of cooking sets fall into the hands of other forces, even if those forces couldn't use them. Only Bufang could use what belonged to Bufang. However, Bufang still felt that it was best to keep it in his hands. Our country's state supernatural agency has the most accurate information about these divine artifacts. Xiao Ai's eyes were still shining as she stared at Bufang. Oh! Bufang raised his eyebrows slightly. Chief Luo also came to his senses at this moment. Xiao Ai was planning to tie Bufang's thigh to the state supernatural agency. However, Chief Luo naturally would not refuse. Yes, Senior, our agency has world-class equipment and a world-class intelligence network. We can get any news about the divine artifacts as soon as possible. Chief Luo nodded hastily. Bufang thought for a moment. Although he could clearly sense the aura and location of the other god of cooking sets after the vermilion bird returned, he could still clearly sense them. However, with the state supernatural agency's help, he might be able to better understand the powers that had obtained the god of cooking set. Of course, there was another important point. For example, the vermilion bird could transform into vermilion bird lady, and the black turtle and white tiger could also transform into humans. In that case, the key was to find them. Bufang was good at finding the god of cooking sets, but he had to rely on other means to find people. Besides, Bufang still needed to find Yu's location. It might be easier to find her with the state supernatural agency's help. This was because Bufang did not refuse their kindness. When Chief Luo and Xiao Ai saw that Bufang did not refuse them, they became excited. Just as they were about to get into the car and leave, suddenly Bufang, half of his body in the armored car, frowned slightly. He raised his head and looked up at the sky. He had killed 4 immortals, and now someone was finally going to do something about it. Chief Luo and the others also looked up at the sky. They saw an unruly old man in a Taoist robe and riding a black panther in the sky. The old man hovered in midair, his eyes flashing. At a glance, he saw Bufang down below. The man came to the top of Bufang and the others, grinning, revealing a mouthful of uneven teeth. "Fellow Taoist, please wait a moment," the old Taoist said with a smile. However, his smile gave people the feeling that it was a fake smile. "Oh!" Bufang narrowed his eyes. He could feel that the old man was very strong, at least much stronger than the immortal he had just killed. A heaven immortal? An old Taoist riding a panther? Could it be the legendary Shin Gongpao? Chief Luo was very knowledgeable. In fact, many superhumans had been asked to learn a lot about ancient myths and legends. The recovery of spiritual energy had let them know that those ancient immortals did exist. Shin Gongpao. Bufang paused. Of course he knew this guy. He heard that he was quite famous in myths and legend. "Fellow Taoist, did you see 4 immortals flying over here just now?" Shin Gongpao, riding on the Black Panther, narrowed his eyes. The Black Panther beneath him also learned from him and narrowed its eyes. The man and the panther moved in sync. Shin Gongpao was a very cautious man. The sect leader had sent him here to investigate the destruction of the immortal exterminating sword. However, he did not act rashly. Since the enemy could destroy the immortal exterminating sword, it meant that the enemy was not weak. 4 immortals? The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched slightly. "Yes. I crushed him to death with a finger," Ling Xian said. Bufang looked at Shin Gongpao and said. In the sky, Shin Gongpao narrowed his eyes, his beard fluttering in the wind. He could not believe that there was someone better at bragging than him. "Are you joking, Your Excellency? If you see them, please tell me. If the sect leader blames you, I'm afraid you won't be able to bear the consequences." The smile on Shin Gongpao's face gradually disappeared. Your panther is not bad." Bufang narrowed his eyes and looked at the panther under Shin Gongpao. The panther, who was squinting with Shin Gongpao, suddenly shivered. "I told you that I killed 4 immortals with a finger. It's up to you whether you believe me or not. If the sect leader blames me, let him come and see me in person." Bufang's expression faded and he answered expressionlessly. "What an arrogant young man." Shin Gongpao was shocked. Shin Gongbao was shocked. "How could the sect leader meet a demon man like you?" Shin Gongbao was shocked by the divine light that burst out from this place. Now it seemed that it was really done by this young man. Why is he so confident? It seems this evil man has some tricks up his sleeve. The old Taoist narrowed his eyes. "I'll give it a try." Shin Gongpao chuckled. Then, he patted the Black Panther under him. Boom! A black aura spread in an instant. The Black Panther suddenly opened its mouth and let out a roar. Countless shadows of leopards shot out from the Black Panther beneath him, dashing toward Bufang as if they wanted to tear him to shreds. Each of these panthers had a real body and they were extremely ferocious. This was Shen Gongpao's specialty. After all, he was a heaven immortal expert. He was very strong. At least, he was stronger than the four immortals. However, Chief Luo, Xiao Ai, and the others did not show the slightest worry. The people down below were not worried either. Bufang was too strong. He had killed four immortals with a finger. They were not afraid of Shen Gongpao anymore. Bufang's face was cold. He did not know who was behind Shen Gongpao and the four immortals, who was the sect leader they were talking about. However, Bufang did not care. No matter who he was, he would kill him with a punch. Facing the tens of thousands of black panthers that were swooping down on him, Bufang took a deep breath. Then, he raised his fist. Rumble, his divine power swirled, causing heaven and earth to tremble and clamor. The next moment, Bufang swung his Taotai arm. The punch flew out in an instant. Shen Gongpao's expression changed in an instant. One by one, the black panthers in the sky exploded. The punch crushed everything and went straight toward Shen Gongpao. Ouch! Shen Gongpao was startled. He slapped the panther on the head. His Taoist robe fell off his body and turned into a huge cloth that blotted out the sky, trying to block Bufang's punch. However, the punch tore his robe apart. Slash! Shen Gongpao coughed up blood. Not daring to say anything, he dragged his seriously injured body away on the panther. If he ran any slower, he might really have to stay here. Oh! Bufang looked at Shen Gongpao, who was bare-chested and riding away on his leopard. He did not expect that Shen Gongpao could survive his punch. How could an ordinary heaven immortal block his punch? Even if Bufang was not in his peak condition, of course, Bufang did not care. He did not use any strength in that punch. Chief Luo and Xiao Ai also looked regretful. They felt it was a pity that Bufang did not kill Shen Gongpao with one punch. Of course, Bufang did not know what they were feeling regretful about. Let's go, Bufang said to Chief Luo and the others. Bufang did not take it seriously after sending Shen Gongpao away with one punch. The sound of an engine filled the air as the armored vehicle drove away from the place and headed for the secret base outside Jiangdong City. That was where the Jiangdong branch of the State Supernatural Bureau was located. In the sky, Shen Gongpao was naked, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. He poured out pills from a jade bottle and stuffed them into his mouth. He might not be good at anything else, but his life-saving skills were top-notch. He would flee as soon as he sensed something was wrong. However, he still suffered a small loss. He was almost killed by the young man's punch. That's terrifying. That young man is definitely an immortal king. I can't believe there's an immortal king on the ancestral planet. I have to tell the sect leader immediately. No wonder he could shatter the sect leader's immortal demise sword clone. After taking the immortal pill, Shen Gongpao's face was ruddy and glowing. He squeezed his legs, and the Black Panther immediately carried him toward the immortal island of Penglai. At the State Supernatural Bureau's base in Jiangdong, beep, beep, beep. The basement was bustling with activity. Men in uniform were running to the trot. Bufang came to the main control room, where dozens of operators were fiddling with computers. Bufang raised his head and looked at the huge light screen in front of him. On the light screen was a model of the Earth. The Earth's appearance had changed greatly, and it was covered with red dots. This is the main control room of the State Supernatural Bureau. We exchange information with the headquarters. You can definitely find what you want. Chief Luo looked proudly at Bufang. The equipment of Hua's State Supernatural Bureau was also one of the most advanced in the world. Bufang raised his eyebrows slightly. He did not understand what Chief Luo meant. All right, help me find a woman. Bufang thought for a moment and said. Chief Luo was taken aback. He did not expect Bufang to look for a woman first instead of a divine artifact. How could the equipment of the State Supernatural Bureau be used to find a woman? Chief Luo looked embarrassed. A woman in a long black dress. She's very beautiful, Bufang said after thinking for a moment. Chief Luo's face darkened even more. There were so many women like this in the world. How was he going to find one? Are there any other characteristics? Chief Luo asked cautiously. Other characteristics? Bufang was taken aback. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Yes. What characteristics? Chief Luo asked curiously. That woman. She has a bad temper and is very strong. She plays with snakes when she's angry and can destroy a country when she's angry. Bufang tilted his head, thought for a moment, and said indifferently. Chapter 16:21. The Immortal Island of Penglai. At this moment, Penglai Island seemed to have turned into a real fairyland. Immortal energy lingered and spread, enveloping the entire island. The misty white mist lingered over the sea like clouds in the sky, looking extremely ethereal. The vegetation on the island seemed to be stimulated by the immortal energy. It grew faster and grew into towering trees with dense branches. A Tao altar sat in the center of the island, dotted with many immortal palaces. Shun Gongbao was naked, and his heart was still filled with horror. Riding on a black panther, he clamped his legs on it and let it gallop forward at high speed. When the panther rushed into the island, many Penglai disciples were stunned when they saw him naked. It turns out that there are immortals with hardcore tastes. Many Qi refinement warrior disciples were mumbling. Shin Gongbao of course ignored them. At this moment, he only wanted to see the person he really wanted to see. Buzz along the way, many immortals greeted him, but he ignored them all. It was an immortal palace surrounded by immortal energy. A Taoist with a 7-colored light disc flashing behind him was sitting cross-legged in the center of the palace, giving a sermon. His magnificent voice lingered in the air, making the whole group of immortal palaces tremble with him. Praying mats were placed all around the Taoist. On the praying mats, experts were sitting cross-legged. Their postures were all different, but they were all quietly listening to the Taoist preach. Patriarch Penglai and the other natives of Penglai Island were even more fascinated by the sermon. Behind Patriarch Penglai was Yu Gu, dressed in a green robe. He scratched his ears and cheeks, feeling a little irritated. He didn't know why, but he couldn't listen to the Taoist's cultivation method at all. This was in sharp contrast to the people around him who were fascinated by the sermon. As he listened to the sermon, he couldn't help but think of the egg-fried rice cooked by Bufang. The food disturbed his mind, making it impossible for him to listen to the almighty expert's voice of the great path. The lofty Taoist was an almighty expert, an existence that even patriarchs feared. Yu Gu could clearly sense the terrible aura emanating from the Taoist. Suddenly, the Taoist's voice stopped abruptly. He opened his eyes, which were filled with peace. 4 swords floated behind him. The swords were green, red, white, and black. Every single one of them contained a shocking might. Just by sensing it, one would feel as if they were about to fall into the sword qi. The immortal palace became noisy. Everyone opened their eyes and looked outside the immortal palace. There, a naked figure riding a black panther staggered over. Sect Master! The screams reverberated in the hall. Shun Gongbao landed on the ground and covered his naked body with his clothes. He looked at the Taoist in front of him and began to cry. He told them about his encounter with Bufang. Everyone in the immortal palace was furious when they heard this. Preposterous! The demons are causing trouble and dare to kill us immortals and gods. The sect master's sword clone represents the sect master. This demon is too audacious. He deserves to die. Killing the celestial immortal, shattering the celestial sword. Does this demon want to be our enemy? Many immortals in the immortal palace were furious. Many heaven immortals and even immortal kings were glaring. However, after a brief uproar, everyone turned to look at the Taoist. The Taoist was as calm as water. His state of mind made many immortals feel ashamed of their inferiority. It doesn't matter. He's just an evil man. However, the divine artifact he obtained is very important, and we can't ignore it. 4 heavenly kings, come out and take the evil man's head. The Taoist said lightly. Below the immortal palace, 4 fierce-eyed divine generals in armor stepped out. They came in different shapes and sizes, but all of them looked fierce. Rest assured, Sect Master. Anyone who offends us and insults immortals will not escape our pursuit. Their auras were incomparably powerful and full of energy. When they spoke in the immortal palace, the void seemed to explode. The Taoist nodded. Then, the 4 heavenly kings stepped on immortal clouds and flew away. Down below, Yu Gu was already terrified. Oh no! The 4 heavenly kings were peak heaven immortals. Each of them was only 1 step away from becoming an immortal king. If the 4 of them joined forces, they could kill an immortal king. Senior is in trouble. Yu Gu felt uneasy. He glanced at Patriarch Penglai, who was still immersed in the sound of the great path. Then, he flinched and left the immortal palace. In the immortal palace, the Taoist's eyes were indifferent. The 4 great divine artifacts have appeared on the ancestral planet. This is a rare opportunity, and we must seize it. The Taoist's eyes widened slightly, and there seemed to be a sharp will surging in them. In addition to the immortal island of Penglai, many immortals and blessed lands in Hua had also arrived. These immortals would eventually collide with each other. Beep, beep, beep. Chief Luo, wearing a pair of black-rimmed glasses, gave this burly man a somewhat intellectual look. Senior, according to your description, we've begun to search the world, and now we've locked on to 4 areas. All 4 areas have had or are in the middle of a great war. We've sent fighter jets to investigate, and we'll have news soon. Chief Luo said to Bufang, who was standing next to him. Bufang nodded, leaned back in his chair, and watched quietly. Before long, images appeared on the huge screen. Buzz, the first scene was that of a barren land. It was a barren land, but the barren land seemed to have been stripped of a layer. The sand and stones on the ground had all melted. Where is this? Bufang asked. This is a desert in Xinjiang, Chief Luo said. The image continued to change. It was now a vast lake. On the surface of the lake, waves surged violently. On the surface of the lake, there was a huge fish with its white belly turned upside down as it floated. And where is this? Bufang continued to ask. This is a great lake in Siberia. Chief Luo's face grew more and more unsightly. Why were the images transmitted back so horrifying? Suddenly, the image changed again. Bufang, who had been sitting in his chair, suddenly had a sharp look in his eyes. The image showed the top of a snowy mountain, where snow and wind howled. There was a graceful figure standing at the top of the mountain. Beside the graceful figure was a stove, and the graceful woman's hand was placed on the stove. Zoom in, Bufang said. Chief Luo's heart trembled. Had he found her? The image on the fighter plane zoomed in and became clearer. Reflected on the screen was a stunning face. Her skin was delicate, her red lips glowed, and her long eyelashes fluttered. It was an enchanting sight. So beautiful, everyone in the control room couldn't help exclaiming. I'm not asking you to look at her. Look at that stove. Bufang's voice rang out again, interrupting Chief Luo's reverie. Chief Luo fumbled with the controls. Suddenly, the image became clear. It was a white stove, and there seemed to be a divine light swirling over it. That's one of the divine artifacts in the 4 spiritual energy sealing points on Earth. A divine stove, Chief Luo exclaimed. Suddenly Yu, with her hand on the stove, seemed to have sensed the spy plane. She raised her emotionless eyes and fixed them on the fighter plane. Everyone felt suffocated. With a bang, the fighter plane exploded soundlessly, and the image was completely cut off. Chief Luo's forehead was beaded with sweat. The moment he met the woman's eyes, he thought he was going to die. It was too terrifying. Where is that place? Bufang rose from his chair, ready to move. That's the roof of the world. The corner of Chief Luo's mouth twitched. Bufang glanced at Chief Luo. The roof of the world? That's the tallest mountain in the world? How did you get there? And why is the stove next to you? More importantly, Bufang caught a glimpse of you being surrounded by a dense crowd of people. Those people seem to be trying to surround you? Are you kidding me? Surround you? You have obtained the legacy of the previous cursed goddess, and you're no weaker than Bufang. How could those people be a match for you? Unless you are also restricted by something on earth. That was possible. Bufang raised his head as if to look through the sky. Bufang had a feeling that someone was watching everything from high above. Get ready, let's go. We're leaving, Bufang said. Chief Luo's face darkened a little. That's the roof of the world. Bufang ignored them. He walked out of the base. Outside, Bufang glanced at the sky. With a thought, he began to sense the location of the White Tiger Heaven stove. He stamped his foot down. A loud boom rang out. Bufang shot into the sky like a cannonball, heading toward the roof of the world. After Bufang left, the people from the Special Abilities Bureau hurriedly came out and prepared all kinds of equipment. Helicopters took off, and fighter planes roared out, following Bufang. Chief Luo had a feeling that something big was about to happen. There might even be a clash between the gods of various countries. It should be noted how fierce the competition for the divine artifact was this time. Even the mysterious Western Church had taken action. Not long after Bufang and the others left, auspicious clouds rolled in from the sky. Thunderclaps seemed to echo in the clouds. 4 figures could be vaguely seen in them. One was holding a pipa, one was holding a great green sword, one was holding a violet-gold dragon fox ferret, and the last one was holding a rainbow-colored umbrella. As soon as the 4 appeared, heaven and earth seemed to dim a little. That evil man's aura has stopped here. It's gone, said Mo Liso, who was holding the flower fox ferret with narrowed eyes. The flower fox ferret twitched its nose as if it was sniffing something, then pointed in a direction. It doesn't matter. We will certainly offer the sect leader's head, Mo Lihai said indifferently, holding the pipa. The other 2 also laughed out loud. They were the 4 heavenly kings of the primitive universe, the celestial court. It would be easy for them to deal with an evil man. Their strength was at the peak of heaven immortal realm. A moment later, the 4 of them stepped on auspicious clouds, clad in thunderbolts, and sped in the direction Bufang had left. It was as if a great, invisible storm was sweeping across the sky. Bufang was like a cannonball, shooting across the sky with a terrible sonic boom. Bufang's speed was too fast. In just a moment, the towering snow mountain appeared in front of him. Bufang also sensed her aura in the blink of an eye. Of course, in addition to Yu's aura, there were all kinds of auras. Bufang narrowed his eyes, a cold gleam flashing in them. Chapter 1622. The Himalayas. It was called the roof of the world. The highest peak, Mount Everest, towered into the clouds, and one couldn't see the sky. Ordinary people couldn't go up there. The clouds were surging. At the peak of Mount Everest, the wind and snow blew. The howling wind brought a cold air. However, at this moment, there was a graceful figure standing on the peak of the mountain. This figure wore a long black dress, which seemed to be flowing. When it brushed against her skin, it gave her a soft feeling. Her black hair fluttered, brushing against her cheeks. Her beautiful face was partly hidden and partly hidden. You stood on the peak. Her eyes were emotionless as she indifferently scanned the area. She stood on the peak of the mountain, looking down at all the mountains. Beside her, there was a white stove. The stove was overflowing with colorful lights and seemed to be emitting a warm aura, causing the ice and snow to slowly melt when they came into contact with it. You tilted her head, glancing at the White Tiger Heaven stove. You naturally recognized the stove. After all, it belonged to Bufang. She had seen Bufang use it. This was also the reason why she took action and snatched the white tiger heaven stove from so many experts. Of course, to you, taking the stove was nothing. Even if the curse power in her body was completely suppressed, her body was extremely tough. The body of a half-step heavenly god was enough to crush everything in the world. Swish! The wind and snow blew. Large snowflakes floated in the sky. Looking up, all she could see was a vast expanse of white. However, in the vast expanse of white snow, then, figures appeared one after another. They were the gods from various countries. The Himalayas was the roof of the world, which separated Hua Nation and many other countries. This time, the white tiger heaven stove was opened on a peak in the Himalayas. The spiritual energy storm had attracted the attention of many gods. These deities were the ones who crawled out of the black hole after the spiritual energy seal was broken. Ring, ring. You rolled her eyes, looking into the distance. There, in the wind and snow, many figures were coming over, stepping on the white snow. They were monks dressed in red robes with yellow kasayas on their shoulders. They wore huge half-moon-shaped hats on their heads, and their styles were completely different. These people came through the wind and snow, and there were people holding huge cylindrical Buddhist umbrellas for them. The sound of Buddha lingered in the air, and the sound of Zen echoed. This was a powerful force. You turned her head to the side again, her eyes slightly cold. Over there was a naked, dark-skinned figure with oil paint on his face and gold and silver jewelry hanging on his neck, who was observing the scene. The auras of these people were extremely strong. Their spiritual energy was soaring into the sky and was incomparably terrifying. There was also a figure riding a bear, and a figure with arms growing out of his back. Of course, apart from these foreign deities, there were also Hua mortals standing there. A team of fairies was also standing on a mountain peak far away, watching you from afar. None of these god spirit experts were in a hurry to attack. They were all confronting each other. After all, everyone wanted the stove, but no one wanted to be the target of everyone. Of course, there was another reason. The woman in the black dress was terrifyingly strong. Although she had no magic power, her fleshly body was extremely strong. Many people had no idea how strong she was. Amitabha, benefactor, hand over the stove and leave the Holy Land, and you will not die. An old lama, clad in a vermilion robe and a yellow kasaya on his shoulders, stared at you and said. In his hands there were golden rings all over his arms. Get lost. Nethery stood on the summit of Mount Everest. No matter how the wind blew, she was indifferent. She only said one word in response to the old lama's words with an expressionless face. The expressions of all the people present changed. This woman is too strong. Many foreign deities narrowed their eyes as gloating expressions appeared on their faces. The gods from India, on the other hand, looked at her coldly. The 4 divine artifacts were scattered all over Earth. Now that the world had undergone a great change, they must be holding great secret. If they could get their hands on them, they might have a chance to glimpse the supreme Tao. Therefore, they would not give up on the stove. Benefactor, you are being stubborn. Only by joining the Buddhist League will you have a good end. The old lama sighed with a compassionate sigh. The next moment, he nodded at the few lamas on either side of him. The lamas lifted their kasayas, looked at you, and walked out with small step. Then, they kicked the ground and soared into the sky. Boom, boom, boom. Spiritual energy gushed out and turned into beams of light, which formed a terrifying energy net. They formed a huge net, which then flew toward Nethery, who was at the peak of the mountain. You placed her hand on the stove. To him, the white tiger heaven stove was not very convenient to use. The main reason was that this stove was too heavy. Even with Yu's fleshly body, she could barely lift it. Nethery slightly furrowed her brows, and her mind flickered. Suddenly, a dark green light flashed in her eyes. On his body there was an indistinct jade-green snake shadow. However, very quickly, an unparalleled pressure enveloped her body. The pressure seemed to come from the depths of the universe. You was expressionless. As expected, the power of the curse in her body was still being suppressed. The pressure made you very uncomfortable. Of course, you thought that she could break free with all her strength. However, if she did that, she would definitely cause a backlash from this world. This planet was not ordinary. Moreover, you had also learned about the 4 divine artifacts. In her opinion, they were Bufang's cooking utensils. This planet must have something to do with the secret in Bufang's body. This was also the reason why Nethery had snatched this stove from the hands of so many experts. Several llamas rushed up. Chanting Sanskrit, they sent a huge energy net toward you. These llamas did not dare to approach you because they knew that her fleshly body was too terrifying. Her fists were like the fiends, and a light touch was enough to make their bodies explode. Therefore, they planned to put some distance between them and the woman with their energy. The llamas were all at the level of Earth immortals. The energy barrier that they created could suppress the woman. Nethery furrowed her brows. She was annoyed that these llamas could not break the energy net with their fist. She was annoyed that she could not break the energy net with her fist. Boom! All of a sudden, you stomped her foot on the mountain. Her crystal-clear foot landed on the top of the mountain, causing it to explode. Then, she threw a punch. At this moment, the small punch seemed to have become the focus of heaven and earth. Bam! The punch collided with the energy net, and the impact seemed to tear it apart in an instant. It was very powerful and terrifying. The expressions of the surrounding experts flickered. All of a sudden, all the experts made their moves. Thousands of rays of light burst out from the back of the Indian god, and he threw out thousands of palms. Countless palm prints covered the sky and flew toward you. The giant bear roared, opened its mouth, and shot out energy bombs. Snow wolves howled, and a storm swept across the sky. The old llama opened his eyes and waved his hand. The golden rings in his hand immediately shot out toward you. The female immortals standing on the distant peaks also raised their fingers. Then, the spinning petals became extremely sharp, turning into sharp knives that tore through the sky and shot toward you. At this moment, everyone reached a consensus. The White Tiger Heaven Stove was the only one among the 4 divine artifacts that could still be fought for. The Western Church had taken away the Black Wok. The god of the pyramid had occupied a kitchen knife. The mysterious Chi cultivator of Hua had obtained a chef's robe. Now, all that was left was the White Tiger Heaven Stove. The gods of India and many other countries would never give it up. Boom! Boom! A dense amount of energy smashed down from the sky. You looked up, her black hair fluttering in the wind. Her eyes were cold. She raised her fist. She fought against the crowd with one punch. She could not believe that her punch had actually blocked so many energy attacks. It should be noted that there were many heaven immortals present. The Indian gods, the old llama, and the female immortals standing on the peak of the mountain were all heaven immortals. Their attacks only caused the sky to shatter. Crack! Crack! The ground under Yu's feet was suddenly covered with cracks, as if it was about to split open. A rumbling sound rang out and the mountain crumbled. The rustling snow turned into a huge avalanche, surging down from the peak of the mountain and surging in all directions. Waves of snow rumbled as if the mountain was collapsing and the earth was cracking. In Tibet, the people at the foot of the Himalayas fell to their knees in fear, rubbing their hands and kowtowing to the sky. The gods were fighting on the divine mountain. The battle between the gods made them anxious. Yu's face was cold. She grabbed the White Tiger Heaven Stove with one hand and blocked the attacks of many experts with the other. The snow under her feet seemed to turn into a huge vortex, rumbling and rumbling non-stop. Many people were shocked by this scene. Where did this woman come from? How could her fleshly body be so ridiculously strong? Benefactor, take a step back. This stove is useless to you. Why don't you give it to the Buddha and bestow upon us fortune? The old llama said. Every time his golden ring smashed down, It would make Nethery's body rumble unceasingly. You glared at the old llama. Shut up. What do you know? I can exchange this stove for food. Can your fortune be eaten? You said. The old llama's eyes turned cold. You're spouting nonsense and stubbornly refusing to come to your senses. You're just a mere mortal. How can you contend with the gods? The old llama let out a long cry, and then a golden light spread from his palm. He rubbed his palm, and then a huge golden staff fell from the sky. The staff was covered with golden rings. A clanging sound rang out. The staff's aura towered into the sky, filled with a sacred aura. This is the divine artifact of the Buddha. Use it to suppress this evil woman. The old lama said coldly. Many experts in the surroundings sucked in their breath. Even the Indian gods felt their hearts palpitate. The few female immortals fell silent. There seemed to be a Buddha's light shining on the staff. Rumble. It fell from the sky and went straight toward you. It was the old lama's magic artifact, the treasure used by Lord Buddha. It had the power to suppress the heavens. The old lama was very confident that the stove was a magic artifact given by Lord Buddha to deal with the evil woman. By using this magic artifact, he had shown his belief that he must get the stove. It made the people in the surroundings very afraid. The ground under Yu's feet caved in. Avalanches kept raging on the mountain, and a layer of the peak was shaved off. Heavy snow swirled around her body. Yu sank deep into the whirlpool of snow as if she was about to be completely devoured. However, Yu's eyes were still filled with determination. Suddenly, that gave Yu pause. She turned her head and looked at the boundless sky. There a whistling sound rang out. Down below, a god of a foreign race riding a huge bear roared, and the huge bear soared into the sky. Who are you? How can you be so unruly? The divinity roared. Light surged. The four llamas put their palms together and soared into the sky as well, trying to fend off the figure who had come to interfere instinctively. That was right. In the distant horizon, a dark figure was approaching at high speed. It was not walking in the air, nor was it stepping on clouds. Instead, it was shooting toward them like a cannonball. The whistling sound and the sonic boom made everyone's expressions flicker. The giant bear slapped its chest and roared. Nethery looked at the figure that was rushing towards her, and the corners of her mouth twitched slightly. Boom. In the sky, standing on the giant bear's shoulder, the divine spirit collided with the man who was charging at them. Only light shone in the sky. Then, the alien god was blown apart and turned into a mist of blood. The giant bear was thrown to the ground, its body covered in snow. The four llamas tried to block it, but in an instant, they were all sent flying backward, coughing up blood. Half of their bodies were blown to pieces by the blast. The terrible aura almost suffocated everyone. Bam! In an instant, the figure fell to the ground. He landed beside you. At this moment, the swirling blizzard seemed to stop. The figure slowly raised his head, revealing an expressionless face. Chapter 16:23. Tap, tap, tap. The helicopter struggled to ascend. In front of it, Bufang could no longer be seen. The fighter plane roared and sped away, leaving the helicopter far behind. In the fighter plane, Chief Luo and Xiao Ai's eyes widened. They watched as Bufang fell like a cannonball and landed on the top of the world that towered into the clouds. They all sucked in a cold breath. The scene on the top of the world was so terrifying that it made their hair stand on end. What was that? It was a grizzly bear the size of a mountain. On the back of the grizzly bear, there was a god of a foreign land, shining with divine light. However, the moment Bufang landed, the foreign god was blown to pieces. The gray bear was beaten to the ground. It didn't even have the chance to scream before it was blown to pieces? What kind of mighty power was that? Senior is so domineering. Xiao Ai clenched her fists, her eyes shining. The scene in front of her was so beautiful. A black-haired woman in a black dress was besieged by many evil forces, facing countless disasters. Just as it was feeling helpless and hesitant, Bufang descended from the sky like a heaven god stepping on colorful auspicious clouds and killed an evil god. His domineering aura could make all the women in the world fall for him. At this thought, Xiao Ai's eyes widened, and she took out a camera. "What are you doing?" Chief Luo looked at Xiao Ai, puzzled. "I want to record everything about Senior. From now on, I'm his die-hard fan," Xiao Ai said, raising her chin. Chief Luo rolled his eyes and ignored Xiao Ai. The world had changed greatly, and all kinds of gods had been born. The world had long known that there were extraordinary people with great power in the world. There was no harm in recording all this. It could even set off a national cultivation craze. That was not bad. Bufang landed. He raised his head and looked around. The avalanche seemed to have stopped the moment Bufang landed. The atmosphere froze for a moment. You looked at the familiar figure in front of her, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Bufang finally came. As expected, guarding the white tiger heaven stove was not wrong. Bufang would eventually come looking for this stove. You pursed her lips. The surrounding snow froze in the air, unable to fall, as if it was being held up by an invisible hand. "Who is this?" The old llama widened his eyes, and a hint of doubt flashed across them. In the distance, the celestial maidens hovering in the air were also puzzled. Many of the foreign gods narrowed their eyes. They had been waiting for an opportunity, but they hadn't expected that someone would appear out of nowhere. Could they be that woman's reinforcements? Save someone? "Today, this stove belongs to our Zen sect. It's useless no matter who comes," the old llama said coldly. Bang! The originally stagnant snowstorm seemed to have once again swept up violently. The great avalanche came roaring down again, wanting to swallow Bufang in an instant. Bang! 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 Snow fell on the rocks, cracking them. Countless snowflakes rolled down, piling up snow as they swept toward you and Bufang. Bufang raised his head. His face was expressionless as he glanced at the snow around him. Then, he simply ignored the terrible avalanche. Instead, he looked at you. "You've been waiting for a long time, right?" Bufang asked. You nodded. Then, she raised her hand and patted the white tiger heaven stove. The white tiger heaven stove instantly flew toward Bufang. "Return it to its rightful owner," you said. She didn't hide her words, so the people around her heard them. "Return it to its rightful owner? What a joke. It belongs to me." The old llama glared, his eyes bursting with light. Ting-a-ling, the golden staff in the sky spun and smashed down vertically. Its original target was you, but this time, it changed its target to the white tiger heaven stove. Bang! A loud noise rang out. The staff ruthlessly smashed the white tiger heaven stove. The white tiger heaven stove, which had been flying away, was smashed into the peak of the mountain. At this moment, the whole mountain shook violently. The avalanche rolled down. In an instant, the white tiger heaven stove and the staff were swallowed. The two divine tools were instantly submerged under the white snow. Nethery leaped into the air, treading on the snow that was falling rapidly. Her long hair fluttered in the wind, and her long dress fluttered as she looked at Bufang. The avalanche fell with a rumble. In an instant Bufang was completely covered by the snow, and there was no more news of him. Oh! Everyone was taken aback. They didn't expect things to develop like this. In the fighter jet in the sky, Chief Luo and Xiao Ai were also stunned. Senior was swallowed by the avalanche? The old llama's face was cold, his long beard and eyebrows fluttering. Suddenly, his pupils constricted. In the pure white snow, a silver light suddenly appeared. It was a wisp of flame. The flame appeared. Rumble! The snow melted and evaporated at a speed visible to the naked eye. Sizzle! White steam rose up from the ground. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air as they looked at the center. There, the young man just now was standing there. Silver flames swirled around the young man's body like silver lotus flowers. Every time they spun, the white snow would evaporate. The dense steam made the young man look like a banished immortal. Stop pretending to be mysterious. Kill him. The old llama was full of hostility. With Bufang's body as the center, the white snow instantly evaporated, revealing the mountain peak. The exposed rocks were also exposed to everyone's sight. With just a thought, he could evaporate the snow on the roof of the world. What kind of technique was this? The old llama took action himself. He soared into the sky, and the golden rings kept gathering in his hand, stacking on top of each other. Then, he thrust out his palm. The rings kept colliding with each other, producing a clanging sound. A golden palm suddenly appeared in the sky. It was as if the Buddha of the ninth heaven had slapped down from the heavens. Its power was terrifying. The celestial maidens all wore shocked expressions. What a powerful palm! It's comparable to the strike of a heaven immortal. As expected of someone from the Zen school, he's very strong. The Queen Mother was right when she told us to be careful of someone from the Zen school. The fairy maidens murmured. Bufang raised his head and looked at the palm with an expressionless face. The strike of a heaven immortal? The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched disdainfully. Facing the palm with the golden rings, Bufang raised his Taotai arm, shook it, and threw out a punch. Bam! The sound was like the heavens falling and the earth rending. Without any fancy moves, his fist collided with the old llama's palm. Boom! The evenly matched fight that everyone had expected did not happen. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air in disbelief. The scene in front of them had completely exceeded their expectations. The young man was unharmed. He had taken the old llama's punch head-on, and his feet did not even waver. His movements were the same as before. However, the old llama's expression changed dramatically in a flash. His face turned as pale as a sheet of paper. Meanwhile, the huge palm was crumbling inch by inch, and the spiritual energy in his body seemed to have dried up. He was knocked flying backward by Bufang's punch, and the golden rings around him were all broken. Rumble! Crack! Crack! The sound of bones breaking rang out. The old llama fell hard to the ground, his feet sinking deep into the ground. From a distance, it looked as if he was kneeling on the ground. The foreign gods were stunned. The fairies were stunned. The Dalai Lama experts were also completely stunned. In the fighter jet, Chief Luo and the others sucked in cold breaths as well. He had been blown to pieces with one punch. The venerable Lama of the Zen school was blown to pieces by Bufang with one punch. Wasn't he being unreasonable? Venerable One! The Dalai Lama experts immediately roared. One by one, they rushed out. His aura towered into the sky, piling up one by one. The densely packed Lamas piled on top of each other and turned into a huge Zen Buddha. Then, the Buddha pointed a finger at Bufang. The Dalai Lama, who had turned into Buddhas, also pointed out their fingers. It was a Zen school array with infinite power. At this moment, they had no choice but to use it. A young Lama ran to the old Lama and tried to pull him up from the ground. However, the old Lama's head was bowed, and he felt his aura becoming weak. Cough! Let's go, the old Lama said weakly, glancing at the young Lama. The pride in his eyes was shattered, and all that was left was fear. That was right. Bufang had destroyed his secret art with one punch. That was a secret art of the Zen school. It's all right, Venerable One. Senior brothers will definitely be able to subdue this evil man, the young Lama said excitedly. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a loud noise rang out. Thousands of screams rang out. Dense streams of blood swept across the heavens. All the Dalai Lamas rushed forward. Their arms, which had stretched out a finger, exploded. Blood splattered on the young Lama's face. He was dumbstruck. Are you bullying my people? Just now, Bufang had only punched once. After recovering some of his strength, Bufang looked extremely domineering. He glanced indifferently at the llama experts who had been smashed to pieces by his punch. He raised his hand. Buzz, a loud explosion rang out. In the distance, the white tiger heaven stove flew out of a pile of snow that had not melted. On top of the stove, there was a monk's staff. It was a divine artifact of the Zen school. Bufang single-handedly grabbed the white tiger heaven stove and glanced at the staff. The next moment, he grabbed the staff. Buzz, under the control of Bufang's divine sense, a silver fire lotus slowly floated out. It wrapped around the staff. Gradually, the golden staff quietly melted. Its supreme power was about to burst out, but it was suppressed by Bufang and could not erupt. The old llama, whose legs had sunk deep into the ground, widened his eyes and stared fixedly at Bufang and the melted staff. You, the old llama pointed at Bufang and spat out a mouthful of blood. He fell to the ground and lost all signs of life. The disheveled Dalai Lama's eyes immediately became lifeless. So powerful! The fairies clicked their tongues. He was so violent and domineering that he had scared a Zen venerable to death. You landed. Bufang waved his hand. The melted staff spilled on the ground, giving off a high temperature and sizzling sound. Bufang grabbed the white tiger heaven stove and frowned. Sure enough, the artifact spirit of the stove was not here. It seemed like it had transformed and left like the vermilion bird. Do you know where the egg in front of the stove went? Bufang asked. Yu was taken aback. She shook her head. I don't know. I killed a monk with one punch and snatched this stove. Yu said expressionlessly. Bufang, I'm hungry. Bufang felt a headache coming on. Where did that arrogant white tiger go? Fine. I'll cook something for you after I solve the problem. Bufang glanced at Yu and said. Buzz, the fighter plane hovered in the air. Chief Luo sucked in a breath of cold air. Senior is too powerful. Senior is too invincible. All of a sudden, the pilot of the fighter plane let out a cry of terror. Chief Luo was stunned. He turned to look. He saw a ferocious face appear outside the window of the fighter plane. It was a divine general holding a pipa. Waff! The burly man opened his mouth and let out a roar. Evil man! Where do you think you're going? Leave behind your head obediently! Boom! His voice rang out, causing a deafening rumble. The entire Himalayas shook at this moment. 4 dazzling beams of light and 4 auspicious clouds floated in the sky. Mo Lihai, Mo Liqing, Mo Lihong, and Mo Lisho stood in the 4 corners of the sky. Shocking immortal energy surged between heaven and earth. Their surging killing intent pressed toward Bufang. The wind and snow fell silent. Chapter 1624. What is that? On the fighter plane, Chief Luo's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He had never expected that someone would suddenly appear outside the fighter jet. He looked fierce and wore armor, and immortal energy lingered around him. This appearance was very familiar. Chief Luo was very knowledgeable, and he immediately knew who the 4 people in front of him were. 4 heavenly kings. The legendary divine general of the heavenly court. Chief Luo gasped. Xiao Ai was also dumbstruck, unable to care about anything else. 4 heavenly kings? Do they really exist? Xiao Ai asked. The 4 great godly generals, seems like their target is Senior. Senior is in danger. Chief Luo said with a long sigh. The 4 heavenly kings were not like Shen Gongbao. They were the real heavenly guardian gods of war. Every one of them was extremely powerful. According to the legends, the 4 heavenly kings were extremely powerful. The appearance of such an existence was enough to intimidate everyone. At the peak of the Himalayas, Bufang raised his head to look at the 4 existences in the sky. The 4 existences hovered in 4 different directions in the sky, each with a different posture. Their expressions were fierce, and their eyes were wide open, as if they wanted to kill Bufang with their gazes. One was holding a pipa, one was holding a long sword, one was carrying a flower fox ferret, and one was holding a pearl umbrella. The entire mountain peak seemed to be locked down by a terrifying aura. The fairies gasped. It's the 4 heavenly kings. The 4 invincible existences in the chaotic universe. Every one of them is a peak heaven immortal, and the 4 of them can kill an immortal king if they join forces. As deities of Kunlun, the fairies naturally knew about the 4 heavenly kings. The Queen Mother had said that many champions from the primordial universe had returned to the homeworld. It seems that it was true. The celestial maidens looked at each other and saw the astonishment in each other's eyes. The status of these female immortals was not as high as the 4 heavenly kings. After all, they were sent by the Queen Mother of the West to search for divine artifacts. Although the ancestral star was recovering, the true gods and immortals still did not dare to make a move. There seemed to be an invisible limit. That was why these little gods and immortals had the opportunity to make a move. The 4 heavenly kings were enough to represent the current top-notch combat power. The surrounding foreign gods also narrowed their eyes. One of the gods of India was trembling. The birth of a divine artifact actually caused such a dispute. "O great God, it's time for you to act." This was a small god, and everyone paid attention to him. He knelt on the ground in a corner, grabbed a dagger from his waist, and cut his palm with it. Bufang and Yu also raised their heads and looked at the 4 heavenly kings. The flustered llamas roared angrily. They hoped that the 4 heavenly kings could avenge their venerable. The 4 heavenly kings had noble statuses. When they saw the Kunlun female immortals, they nodded at them. The female immortals hurriedly nodded. Then, the 4 heavenly kings looked at each other and prepared to attack. The sect master had ordered them to bring back the demon's head, so they naturally had to do it well. Do it. Emolihai grabbed his pipa and glanced at his 3 brothers. Then, with his big belly and immortal energy, he stepped forward. He took a step forward and his figure began to swell, growing to a height of 10,000 feet. It was as if he was a god who ruled over everything. Holding the pipa in his hand, he glared at Bufang with wide eyes. "Give me your life, demon!" Emolihai roared, and the whole Himalayas exploded. Bufang looked up at Emolihai, his face expressionless. In front of the 100,000 feet tall Emolihai, he was as small as an ant. Yu tilted her head, narrowed her eyes and rubbed her fists. She leaned forward slightly as if she was going to attack. "Don't worry, I'll do it." Bufang glanced at Yu and stopped her. "Oh." Nethery sighed, feeling a little regretful. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. What does that regretful expression mean? However, Bufang didn't need Yu to attack. He was going to end the battle quickly. After all, he was in a hurry to find the white tiger. That arrogant white tiger has a bad temper. Bufang had a feeling that this fellow would definitely cause a lot of trouble. Clang! 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 Emolihai straightened his back and took a step forward. His eyes burst with divine light as he stared straight at Bufang. His fingers plucked the pipa. A 5-colored sound wave spread from the pipa, enveloping Bufang. The sound of the pipa lingered in the air. The surrounding snow-capped mountains immediately began to tremble soundlessly. The snow was trembling endlessly as if it was being stirred. As it trembled, the snow exploded. Boom! Boom! Terrible rumbles kept erupting from the surrounding snow mountains. Pure white snow sprinkled down from the sky. "Demon! Die!" Emolihai bellowed. The remaining 3 heavenly kings looked on with faint smiles. They were all very confident. They couldn't sense Bufang's aura. Since he could scare Shen Gongbao away, he might be a heaven immortal expert. However, they were not afraid. Emolihai would definitely succeed. The 3 heavenly kings also transformed into bodies tens of thousands of feet tall, each holding a divine artifact and glaring down at Bufang. They were building momentum for Emolihai. They wanted to make this demon kneel with their pressure. In fact, the 4 heavenly kings were famous in the primitive universe. They didn't even need to make a move to deal with demons. The sound wave spread toward Bufang. Bufang raised his eyebrows slightly. He felt as if his body was a little twisted. Bufang was quite surprised. The means of these mythical figures were indeed amazing. However, this sound wave had almost no effect on him. Bufang motioned you to take a step back. Then, Bufang stomped his foot on the ground. Boom! The ground shook. Bufang soared into the sky like a beam of light. How dare you resist? Emolihai sneered. He plucked the strings of his pipa and threw it in Bufang's direction. Go! Clang! Clang! The sound of the pipa was like pearls falling on a jade plate. The sound wave twisted everything as if to tear Bufang's body apart. However, the next moment Emolihai frowned. He found that when the sound wave swept past Bufang's body, it didn't affect Bufang at all. This bam! Bufang landed on the pipa as if he was hanging upside down. He looked at the pipa, which was made of a strange material. Playing the pipa? I can also. Bufang took a step forward. He landed on the strings of the pipa. Emolihai flew into a rage. He kept plucking the strings with his fingers. He wanted to press Bufang to death on the pipa. However, when Bufang was on the strings, he spun and jumped. His eyes were closed. The strings he stepped on produced all kinds of notes, and a messy sound wave spread out. Emolihai's face darkened. Bang! 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 Suddenly, the strings of the pipa broke one by one. Emolihai flew into a rage. Bastard! Bufang, who was spinning and jumping, suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze was as sharp as a knife. He stomped hard on the pipa. A loud noise rang out. The pipa burst into pieces. The 3 heavenly kings could no longer watch the show. Their figures flashed as they charged toward Bufang. The 4 top heaven immortals attacked at the same time, causing the entire Himalayas to change color. This was more like a battle between immortals. The Kunlun fairies widened their eyes. Heaven immortals? Bufang gave a disdainful smile. A sword of azure light shot over. Bufang flicked his finger, shattering the sword. A pearl umbrella spun, shooting out beams of sharp divine light. The divine light hit Bufang, but it could do nothing to Bufang. This body, the 4 heavenly kings were shocked. Let me! Emolihai shouted. A moment later, the flower fox ferret in his arms shot out. It expanded in the air, and turned into a giant ferret that blotted out the sky. The ferret opened its mouth and roared. Its eyes were red, and its ferocity soared to the sky. This ferret is not bad. Bufang's eyes lit up. It seemed that the 4 heavenly kings were not completely useless. At least, they had raised a good ingredient. The ferret's back was patterned, and its fur was soft and smooth. It was a rare divine beast. The corner of Bufang's mouth rose. Then, he picked up Foxy, who was lying on his shoulder. Suddenly, he threw him at the flower fox ferret. Little Hu, I'll leave this big ferret to you, Bufang said calmly. Little Hu wagged his tail, still a little confused. When the big marten saw a little fox flying towards it, a look of disdain flashed across its eyes. It opened its mouth wide and let out a roar. A terrifying shock wave instantly rushed towards it, as if it wanted to swallow the little fox whole. How could this ant-like spirit beast dare to act tough in front of a heavenly king spirit beast? Little Hu roared at the big ferret, its fur standing on its back. Little Hu was instantly enraged. Puff, puff, puff. Behind his buttocks, the originally hidden tails suddenly emerged one by one. 9 tails emerged. Boom. Little Hu's body suddenly grew bigger. His eyes were red. The appearance of the 9-tailed fox emerged, and Little Hu's blood was boiling. In an instant, Little Hu's fur turned blood-red. That was the restless heaven god blood. A roar rang out. A paw patted the big ferret's head. The ferocious big ferret instantly became timid. Little Hu pressed it in the air and kept patting it. Emolihai was dumbfounded. his flower fox ferret was suppressed by a nine-tailed fox? Bufang walked in the air step by step. He glanced at Little who looked like he was lecturing a child. Then, he turned to the four heavenly kings. Don't break it. Keep it as an ingredient, Bufang said calmly. Little Who's eyes brightened. Thinking about food, his saliva dripped from his mouth. Mo Lisho's lungs were about to explode. Ayaya! My flower fox ferret is a divine beast. How dare you use it as an ingredient? Mo Lisho stomped his feet in anger. However, under his astonished gaze, Fong Chio's eyes were filled with shock. Little Who returned with the half-dead flower fox ferret in his mouth, handing it to Bufang. Bufang grabbed the flower fox ferret. After studying it for a while, he put it into the system's storage space. It's a good ingredient. The four heavenly kings were furious. They had never been humiliated like this before. In the distance, the female immortals of Kunlun were also shocked. It seemed like even the four heavenly kings couldn't do anything to this evil man. Let's make a move too. The Queen Mother needs a divine stove. We can't let her down. The female immortals nodded. Then, immortal energy exploded out. These female immortals flew toward Bufang as if they had ascended to the heavens. Flower baskets appeared in their hands without anyone noticing. They plucked beautiful flowers from the basket. Then, they sprinkled the flowers toward Bufang. Swoosh! 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 The flowers exploded in the air, turning into sharp petals. The petals spun, bringing with them a terrible cutting force. The four heavenly kings didn't refuse the female immortals' help. They returned to their normal size and stood in a corner of the sky, forming an array. Rumble! A seal emerged in the sky. It was the seal condensed of immortal energy, the heavenly king seal. Together with the female immortals' killing moves, the heavenly king seal flew toward Bufang. The foreign gods and immortals who were watching the show also attacked, each using their own means. Anu has diarrhea. A foreign deity muttered an incantation, and a huge face that blotted out the sky manifested behind him. At the same time, the face-slapping mouth spewed out thunderbolts, which smashed toward Bufang. All the gods and immortals used their own means. The blood of the Indian god, who was drawing circles on the side, flowed all over the ground as he drew an array. The next moment, the blood-colored array flickered. Great God Garuda! Come out! The Indian god knelt down with a fanatical look on his face. All the gods and heaven immortals attacked. In a flash, the top of the Himalayas was enveloped by countless beams of divine light. In the fighter jet, Chief Luo and the others were already stunned. They were superhumans, but they had never seen such a magnificent battle. Can Senior resist it? Xiao Ai's mouth was trembling, and her hand holding the camera was shaking. Chief Luo, on the other hand, did not know what to say. You looked at Bufang, who had become the focus of everyone's attacks, and her eyes shone brightly. If even these minor immortals and gods could baffle Bufang, then he would no longer be Bufang. The corners of Yu's mouth curved upward slightly. Boom! Sure enough, a mighty aura rose from Bufang's body and towered into the sky. At this moment, Bufang did not hold back his aura at all. His aura continued to climb. In an instant, it reached an extremely frightening level. At this moment, Bufang seemed to have become the focus of heaven and earth. Bufang raised his hand. Divine power swirled around it, making it shine brilliantly. In the face of so many attacks, naturally, Bufang thrust out his palm. No matter how many tricks he has, I'll deal with them with one palm. The four heavenly kings glared at him, the celestial immortals shouted, and the foreign gods and immortals displayed their divine powers. If this scene were to happen, the world would be shocked. However, in the next moment, these strange phenomena, they were gently wiped away by a large hand made of energy. It was as if dust had been wiped away, and they vanished into thin air. One move, and he was killed in an instant. Chapter 1625. One move. All of them were wiped out. They were wiped out in an instant. The surroundings were silent. The world was silent. There was only the sound of the wind and snow and the roar of fighter jets in the sky. In the fighter jets, everyone felt as if their necks were being strangled. Their bodies froze in the air, and they could not move at all. It was not that they did not want to move, but that they had forgotten to. What happened? Just now what the F***ck happened? Where are all the gods, the 4 heavenly kings, and the immortals of Kunlun? Chief Luo was struck dumb. The walkie-talkie in his hand fell to the ground with a clatter. Xiao Ai's eyes widened, and her hand that was holding the camera turned red. Senior, you're really F***king, so cool. No one had expected that the result would be like this. Just when everyone was worried about Bufang, Bufang's expression suddenly changed. With just a light palm, he swept it across the sky as if he was holding a rag. The gods and the 4 heavenly kings were like stains that were wiped away by him with a wave of his hand. He was so powerful that it was suffocating. His movement was so fast that no one could react. Those are the 4 heavenly kings, the guardian divine generals of the heavenly court. Can't you give me some face and fight a little longer? The corner of Xiao Ai's mouth twitched. The next moment, she realized what was going on and looked at the camera in her hand. Retreat. Retreat. I need to analyze what happened just now. However, what she saw stunned her for a long time. The wind and snow kept blowing. The llamas who had fallen to the ground were dumbstruck. Looking at the clear blue sky, their minds seemed to be drifting with the wind. Is that human? You did not think much of it. With Bufang's strength, this was just normal. Great God Garuda, come out. Ahem, cough, cough. Halfway through his words, the Indian god's throat seemed to be clutched by a large hand. His eyes widened and he began to cough. The main reason was that what happened just now was too F***king scary. God Garuda, you'd better go back, the Indian god wanted to cry. However, the array formation had already been activated, and he had lost so much blood, he couldn't bear to give up just like that. Therefore, the formation flickered. The array connected to the heavens and tore the sky apart. Bufang stood in the sky with his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes closed. That palm strike seemed casual, but in reality, it was the result of Bufang using his divine power. On Earth, the invisible suppression still existed. Although Bufang's strength had recovered a lot because of Vermilion Bird's return, it was still not enough. However, he was still unable to use the power of law. In the Chaosverse there were 3,000 laws. But on Earth, Bufang could sense that the power system was different. Heaven immortals were equivalent to gods. To Bufang, killing gods with a single slap was nothing out of the ordinary. He opened his eyes. His eyes were very calm. He was, after all, a man who had seen great storms. When the soul demons invaded the chaotic universe, countless people died. His vision was too high, and it determined his behavior and style. Open your mouth. Bufang breathed a sigh of relief. His face was as calm as still water. Oh! Suddenly, Bufang frowned slightly, turned his head, and looked in a direction in the distance. There, a blood-colored array was spinning, and there seemed to be a terrible aura in it. There seemed to be a deafening cry of a bird ringing out from within. As Bufang's gaze shifted, the Indian god, who had finished drawing the array, felt his legs turn to jelly. Then, without hesitation, the Indian god turned and ran toward the distance of the Himalayas, ignoring the great god who was about to crawl out of the array, rolling and crawling on all fours. He was really frightened by Bufang. That palm had killed so many immortals of Hua. Those immortals were much stronger than him. God Garuda, I'm sorry. The god was very sad, and he was crying in his heart. But he still ran away. The array spun, and the void was torn apart. There seemed to be the figure of a big golden bird emerging from the array. Garuda was the god of India, a kind of golden-winged divine bird that rose from the flames and was immortal and indestructible. It was somewhat similar to the phoenix of Hua. When the void was torn apart, a commotion broke out in all parts of Hua. In the immortal mountain of Kunlun, a furious voice rang out, causing thunder to rumble in the sky. As the earth expanded, Kunlun, as the blessed land of the immortals, expanded tens of thousands of miles into Mianyang. At this moment, the vast immortal mountain of Kunlun was shaking violently. I can't believe a fairy of Kunlun has fallen. Who did it? How dare you kill the maid of the Queen Mother of the West? A cold, furious voice shook heaven and earth. From the 9 heavens to the blue sky, the immortals of Kunlun will hunt this evil woman down with all their might. The Queen Mother bellowed. She had sent a fairy of Kunlun to hunt down an evil woman and seize the stove. Now that the fairy had fallen, it must have something to do with that evil woman. Even if it had nothing to do with her, it must be related. On the immortal island of Penglai, the sound of the great path rang out, and immortal energy rose from the sea. Suddenly, the Taoist sitting cross-legged in the center of the immortal palace with a 7-colored disc above his head stopped preaching. His eyes widened, and his gaze was filled with faint anger. The 4 heavenly kings have fallen. This evil woman is too presumptuous. As soon as the words came out, everyone in the immortal palace was shocked. Impossible! The 4 heavenly kings were peak heaven immortals, and when they cast the heavenly king seal together, they could even kill an immortal king. How could they have fallen on the ancestral planet? Is that evil woman that powerful? Impossible! The 4 heavenly kings are the divine generals of the celestial court. The ancestral planet has been revived, and the celestial court is about to return. But now the divine generals have fallen. This is an ominous sign. The immortals in the immortal palace murmured among themselves, their faces filled with shock. They could not believe it. They did not even want to believe that the 4 heavenly kings were ranked among the top among all the immortals and God. Shin Gongbao hid under it, a look of relief on his face. Fortunately, he ran fast, or the sect master's anger would have been because of him. The Taoist closed his eyes and pinched his fingers together. There seemed to be an invisible force lingering around him. Then, the Taoist priest opened his eyes. 2 of the 4 great divine artifacts are with that evil man, and he has gathered the ancestral planet's fortune. He will surely face a great calamity. The Taoist pinched his fingers together, and there seemed to be a deep look in his eyes. Suddenly, an immortal cloud rose from under him, and he flew out of the palace and hovered in midair. He looked at the endless coastline. The ancestral planet's revival has accelerated, and immortal kings are about to strike. This evil man must be killed, and the 4 heavenly kings must be avenged. The Taoist turned around. He looked down at the immortals and deities. Gentlemen, are there any immortal kings willing to capture this evil man? At the peak of the Himalayas, a loud and clear bird cry resounded. There seemed to be a flame burning in the void. Then, a large golden bird spread its wings and flew out. It flew out of the void and instantly turned into a god with a bird's head and a human body. He was clad in golden rings and a suit of golden feather armor, looking very magical. Buzz, this was the great god of India, Garuda. After stepping out of the array, Garuda glanced around and rested his eyes on Bufang. At this moment, Bufang was the only one who could confront him head-on. As for the mortal fighter jet in the distance, he ignored it. Little Tanuki, Jelly, Jiwa. Garuda walked out and said a lot of things, but Bufang did not understand a single one of them. After all, he was the god of India. However, he quickly retreated and switched to using his divine sense. This time, Bufang understood him. Hand over the divine artifacts, and I'll spare your life. Garuda stood high up in the sky, surrounded by a golden flame. His life was immortal. He was the god of India. He was the great god under Shiva, and his strength was extremely powerful. comparable to an immortal king of Hua. Even though he was in Hua's territory now, he was fearless. At most, if he encountered an immortal king, he could just run away. Besides, he could not be killed. His regenerative ability was very powerful. Inside the fighter jet, Chief Luo and the others narrowed their eyes. That's Garuda, the symbol of India's immortality, Chief Luo said. After witnessing Bufang's fearlessness, he was able to remain calm in the face of such a great god. He had seen the world, and he was indeed different. A big bird? I'm afraid this Indian god doesn't know Senior's character yet, Xiao Ai said in a happy and relaxed mood. Now that the gods were in power, mortals like them could breathe a sigh of relief when someone appeared and punished the gods in this way. As far as they knew, the appearance of the gods had brought about a change in the world. After all, no one knew whether the gods who appeared were good or bad. In this world, there was a small country, or even an entire country, where everyone was slaughtered by the god they worshipped. Not all deities were good. Senior's character? Chief Luo was taken aback. What kind of character did Bufang have? A big bird. Isn't it just a bird? Besides, don't you think this Garuda is very similar to the golden-winged rock in our myths? There's an old saying that goes like this: when a koan transforms into a rock, it's so big that it needs 2 grills, one with secret recipe and one with mild spiciness, Xiao Ai said eloquently. Chief Luo stared at Xiao Ai, dumbfounded. You're the one who's king smart and brave, aren't you? The character described by Xiao Ai was really a good match for Bufang. Didn't you see that Emo Lisho's flower fox ferret was taken away as an ingredient? The big bird of India will probably end up in a very sad state. Garuda was a lofty existence. According to the immortals of Hua, he was an immortal king. Although he was just an ordinary immortal king, he was powerful enough to do whatever he wanted on Earth. This was his first appearance. Of course, he had to do his best. Bufang looked indifferently at Garuda. He grabbed the white tiger heaven stove in his hand. Is this what you want? Bufang asked. Garuda's eyes lit up. Yes, you're smart, Garuda said. Take this, Bufang said, twitching the corner of his mouth. As soon as he said that, he gently swung the white tiger heaven stove. A ripping sound rang out. The stove drew an arc in the air and swept across the sky. Garuda raised his hand greedily. This was a divine artifact that all the gods and immortals around the world were fighting for. If he could get it back, the great god Brahma would definitely reward him with a supreme opportunity. Boom! All of a sudden Garuda felt that something was not right. As the stove fell, its power did not diminish at all. Bam! Grabbing the stove, Garuda's eyes widened. He felt a great force coming at him, and then the stove smashed into his face. In a flash, Garuda turned into a giant golden bird, spread his wings, and soared into the sky. You're courting death. A golden-winged rock? Bufang's figure had appeared above Garuda's head. No. I think it's a hybrid. Garuda paused. He had a bad feeling. What is this immortal of Hua going to do? Boom! Bufang punched Garuda's head. Circulating his divine power, Bufang did not hold back at all. Garuda screamed as he was knocked down from the sky and smashed hard into the Himalayas. Even the mountain was a little shorter. The Indian god, who had climbed over the Himalayas, shuddered when he heard the scream. Dear God Garuda, take care, and Bufang's eyes lit up as he looked at Garuda, who was bathed in flames again. An immortal bird? What does that mean? It means an endless supply of food. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched slightly. Another move was launched. Garuda let out another miserable scream, and then he stopped breathing. After a while, Garuda rose from the flames again. Screams rang out one after another. After a long time, extremely weak and dejected, Garuda was caught by Bufang and thrown into the system's storage space. From beginning to end, there was only a hint of sadness in his heart. Damn it! I'm the god Garuda, comparable to a Hua immortal king. Why am I captured as a food ingredient? Where the hell did this demon come from? Lord Brahma! Save me! Boom! No matter how Garuda screamed, Bufang shoved him into the system's storage space. Everyone in the fighter jet was speechless. Down below, Bufang walked up to you, took you, and sat down on the ground. Little Hu jumped up and down beside him. Puff! On the quiet peak of the Himalayas, Bufang lit a silver bonfire. Moreover, Bufang pulled out the wings of a giant golden bird, plucked off its feathers, and put it over the fire to roast. Chief Luo, Xiao Ai, Garuda. Chapter 1626. The fighter jet roared. From above, the rope fell. Chief Luo, Xiao Ai, and the others jumped out of the jet. Although they were not as strong as immortals, their bodies were strong enough to survive a fall of 10,000 meters. However, they were still able to withstand this height. Chief Luo was fine. After all, he was a fire elemental superpower. When he used it, his head would burst into flames, and he was not afraid of the cold on the roof of the world. But Xiao Ai and the others could not. They wrapped themselves tightly in their military coats, making them look like a ball. They came to Bufang's side. Xiao Ai was still holding a camera in her hand. She zoomed in from afar as if she wanted to record the scene of Bufang cooking the golden-winged rock. Oh no, Garuda! At the thought of this, Xiao Ai's hands trembled. She did not know whether it was because of the cold or excitement. Garuda was the great god of India. He was the supreme god. But what happened in the end? He came to Hua and was killed by Senior. Why did it feel so exciting? When Xiao Ai and Chief Luo approached Bufang, Bufang was preparing to grill Garuda's wings. The silver divine flame was burning quietly. It was as if it was the same color as the white snow, and when it shone on it, it was rather beautiful. The divine fire was burning and emitting a scorching heat that chased away the chill on Xiao Ai and Chief Luo's bodies. Bufang glanced at them as if he was surprised by their courage. Sit, Bufang said. Xiao Ai and Chief Luo quickly sat down awkwardly. Senior is a ruthless man. He killed all the gods and Buddhas with one slap. He turned Garuda into an ingredient with just a few punches. Such a ruthless man is rarely seen in 1,000 years. Senior, are you really going to grill Garuda's wings? Xiao Ai swallowed her saliva and said. Bufang paused, then turned to look at her. The corner of his mouth twitched expressionlessly when he saw the latter was filming with a camera. Of course. Don't worry, Garuda has a strong recovery ability. He will have an endless supply of wings. Bufang said. Xiao Ai did not know whether to laugh or cry. Was she worried about this? She was afraid that Bufang's action would offend Brahma, the great god of India. That god was a truly terrifying existence. Even among the immortals of Hua, he was a supreme being. However, she could not see the slightest worry on Bufang's face. The camera was flashing, and Xiao Ai did not say anything else. Xiao Ai took off her heavy cotton-padded jacket around the divine flame. Due to the presence of the divine flame, Xiao Ai did not feel the heat. While Xiao Ai was filming, she could not help but turn the camera to Nethery. Is this the woman Senior has been looking for? It was really beautiful, Xiao Ai exclaimed, and she even felt a little ashamed of herself. It was too beautiful. She was even more beautiful than the fairies in heaven. Especially now, Yu was sitting next to Bufang with her arms around her fair legs. Her chin rested on her thighs, and her fine, neat hair spread down, covering half of her face. There was a hint of melancholy on the fair and flawless side of her face. Her eyes seemed to be staring at the bonfire in front of her, watching the dancing flame. It was dreamlike and unparalleled in beauty. Let's think of these wings as the wings of a rock, Bufang's discordant voice rang out. He did not seem to be in the mood to appreciate the beauty. At this moment, all Bufang's attention was on the Garuda's wings. This Garuda is a mixed blood rock, but its magic power is not bad. As he spoke, Bufang skillfully plucked off the golden feathers of the rock. When the bare wings appeared, Bufang washed them with snow water. The next moment, he found a branch out of nowhere and inserted it into the Garuda's wings. Then, he approached the bonfire and used it to roast the wings. Senior, tell us what we need to pay attention to when roasting the rock wings. Xiao Ai asked playfully. Bufang glanced at her but did not refuse. You need to control the fire. The wings of a rock are no different from ordinary chicken wings. It's just that they are a little different in size. Bufang said. Garuda, you need to pay attention to the fire and the color of the wings. Of course, be careful not to burn them. The burnt smell will affect the texture and taste. As he spoke, Bufang controlled the divine flame to burn the wings. Crackle! The divine flame jumped. Not long after, oil appeared on the bird's wings and slowly dripped down along the bird's wings. As the oil dripped into the bonfire, the flames became more majestic. How do you pay attention to the fire? Let me tell you a trick to roast the wings. It's very practical. To judge the fire, you need to look at the changes in the meat. As for how to feel the changes, you can do this. As he spoke, Bufang reached out his hand, and with a smacking sound, he plucked the hot wings. He peeled off a piece of skin. The oil rolled out, filling the air with a strong aroma. If you roast it like this, it's almost done, Bufang said solemnly. Then, he began to fiddle with the bottles and cans. He didn't say anything else. He sprinkled the bottles and cans on the Garuda's wings. His movements were skillful, and Xiao Ai was dumbfounded. Xiao Ai sniffed the aroma in the air, feeling intoxicated. It smelled so good. She had never smelled something so fragrant before. His appetite couldn't help but be aroused. The rock is a divine beast, and its meat contains immortal energy. Once it's heated and roasted, the immortal energy will mix with the aroma of the meat, and the aroma will be very strong. Of course, this requires skill. Otherwise, it will be difficult to bring out the aroma to the extreme. Instead, it will make it hard to taste, Bufang said. Xiao Ai kept nodding. Chief Luo was dumbfounded. F***ck. You can roast a wing with so many tricks? And you're so eloquent. This showed that Bufang had done a lot of roasting divine beast. Senior is indeed a senior. A fighting chicken among foodies. Next, it's time to pour the honey, Bufang said. Bufang took out a jar of honey from the system's storage space. That's right, this was not ordinary honey. It was the honey cultivated by a god-level divine bee. The honey was golden in color and exuded a sweet aroma. He opened the lid of the jar. Bufang dipped a brush in the honey and began to pour it on the golden rock wing. The golden honey was a little sticky. When it was poured on the wing, the honey flowed down along the golden and oily skin. Xiao Ai couldn't help but drool. Little Hu jumped up and down. He couldn't wait any longer. Hachi-Chi panted heavily. Yu's eyes lit up as well. She stared at the wing. Like breaking ink, Bufang swept the brush. He finished pouring the honey. The golden wing glowed with a hazy golden light, and steam rose from it, making it look like an exquisite work of art. Bufang's appetite was also very high. After all, he was hungry after working for a while. The honeyed rock wing is ready, Bufang said. His tone was slightly heavier, which made everyone's heart tremble. F***ck, it's finally ready. Their saliva almost flowed into a river. The rock wing was very big. Bufang was not stingy. He cut some meat for Xiao Ai and Chief Luo as well. Of course, it was just a little. Given Xiao Ai and Chief Luo's physical fitness, eating that much was already their limit. Although Garuda was a little weak, he was, after all, one of the top gods in India. The spiritual energy contained in the meat was very turbulent. Especially after being cooked by Bufang, the spiritual energy in the meat did not dissipate at all. Bufang gave the roasted wing to you. Then, he casually pulled another wing from Garuda's body in the system's storage space. Anyway, this fellow is immortal, and the wing recovers very fast. So, Bufang did not mind roasting the wing. One for little Hu and one for himself. When he was done, the whole summit of the Himalayas was filled with the rich aroma of roasted wings. Bufang also tried a variety of roasting methods, adding cumin and pepper. Xiao Ai ate with relish, her eyes gleaming with immortal light. The strength of her superpower soared. After eating a small piece of rock meat, her superpower actually reached A class. This made her very happy. It's delicious, and it can improve my cultivation base. Chief Luo was also very surprised. Is Senior the god of cooking? He could not believe that his superpower had reached S class. He did not know what to say. To be honest, the recovery of spiritual energy was not as good as a roasted wing. After eating a little, they could not eat anymore. There was too much energy and they would not be able to digest it. If they forced themselves to eat, they would only be stuffed to death. They could only look at Bufang and Yu, little Hu, gorging themselves with envy. It was a blessing to be able to eat. While feeling envious, Xiao Ai was busy sending the information to the higher-ups. The roasted rock wings needed to be shared. She wanted more people to feel the pain of not being able to eat them. Even in the Himalayas, the signal was very weak. Xiao Ai still had the most advanced equipment, so she sent the video. Xiao Ai, who was good at computers, uploaded the video and used some tricks to make it the headlines. Even if it did not make the headlines, it was soon pushed to the headlines by the netizens. This video was too shocking. She clicked on the video. What she saw was a group of immortals and deities hovering at the top of the Himalayas. The immortals in different shapes and forms made many people exclaim. When Bufang fought the old Lama and melted the ice and snow around him, the video reached its climax. However, the climax was not over yet. What happened next made the netizens even more excited. The appearance of the 4 heavenly kings, the attack of the Kunlun fairies, the appearance of foreign deities and deities, it made the netizens hold their breath. However, when they saw all the deities and Buddhas in the sky being killed by Bufang with one slap, everyone who was watching the video was dumbfounded, unable to utter a single word. They were completely shocked. F***ck. This is too exciting. Is this a movie? However, it was not over yet. Then, the Indian god Garuda appeared. In the end, the Garuda, which everyone thought was an almighty being, became a food ingredient and was captured. Everyone did not know whether to laugh or cry. When the video changed to the rock wing, everyone was boiling with excitement. The scene changed so fast that it looked like a tornado. However, they could not take their eyes off it. Their faces seemed to be glued to the screen, and their noses kept twitching. Damn it! I can smell the honey-roasted wing even through the screen. The video ended after Xiao Ai finished eating the rock meat. With a click, it ended. There was still an unfinished part to be continued. This caused everyone to be dumbstruck. The whole internet seemed to be about to explode. A movie? Special effects? But it was so real that it did not seem fake at all. Besides, the spiritual energy on Earth had recovered, and the immortals had descended to the world. This kind of thing was not fake. F***ck. This is too F***king shocking. What kind of ferocious person is that? He killed the 4 heavenly kings with one slap? I almost peed my pants watching it. It's too exciting. Slapping those high and mighty deities to death with a single slap is simply too satisfying. Roasting the wing is the most exciting, okay? The highlight of the video is the roasting of the Garuda's wing. Poor Garuda! That's enough. I'm not talented, but I just learned from the senior in the video and roasted a chicken wing. Watching the video and eating the chicken wing, it's really delicious. The netizens were boiling with discussion. Xiao Ai was holding the computer and giggling foolishly. She had decided that from today on, she would cling to the senior's thigh and secretly film. Oh, follow the senior. Chief Luo glanced helplessly at the giggling Xiao Ai, then at Bufang, who had spat out a bone. He was both surprised and delighted to see Bufang. For the country, such an existence might bring benefits to the peace of the country. Well, I'm full now. I'll have to trouble you to find someone again. Bufang spat out the bone on the ground. It fell into the snow, still steaming. Senior, please tell me. Well, there should be an egg in front of this stove. Someone must have escaped from that egg. It shouldn't be difficult to find that person's identity and traces. Help me find that person, and I'll treat you to flower fox ferret meat next time. Bufang said. Flower fox ferret. There was an egg in front of the divine artifact. Did someone escape from that egg? Chief Luo's eyes narrowed. This was a very important piece of information. Don't worry, Senior. I'll arrange it right away. After that, Chief Luo walked toward the fighter jet. Bufang happily planned to roast another Garuda wing. However, just as Bufang tore off the Garuda wing, the vermilion bird and Qilin's voices suddenly rang in his mind. Bufang froze and his eyes narrowed. Chapter 16:27. Bufang paused. His eyes narrowed and he fell into deep thought. The voices of the vermilion bird and the Qilin rang out in his head. Yes, they were speaking at the same time. Bufang frowned. It was one thing for the vermilion bird to speak, but the Qilin also spoke. Was something big about to happen? Bufang's mind flickered as he entered his spirit sea. The sleeves of his vermilion robe fluttered. Hovering in the center of the spirit sea, Bufang looked at the majestic Qilin and the vermilion bird in the distance. The vermilion bird was burning like a fire. Now that she had completely recovered, she gave Bufang a very different feeling. The previous vermilion bird seemed to lack some spirituality. But now, the vermilion bird really seemed to have flesh and blood. What's wrong? Bufang asked, puzzled. Rumble. As soon as the Qilin moved, heaven and earth rumbled. However, the Qilin didn't say anything. He just rolled his eyes. Then, the vermilion bird spoke. Her beautiful voice immediately lingered in the air. Little host, White Tiger is in trouble. Vermilion bird said. It was as if a gentlewoman was whispering in one's ear. The voice was soft, and it kept stirring one's ear. White Tiger is in trouble? Bufang paused, and then he understood what the vermilion bird meant. White Tiger had run out of the egg, and now it must be in some trouble. I don't think so. White Tiger has broken out of the egg. Although it's flawed, unless it's in existence at the level of a high-grade god king, no one can suppress it, Bufang said. On Earth, a high-grade god king was almost equivalent to a peak immortal king. There must be existences at this level, but they shouldn't appear often. I don't know about that. White Tiger contacted me. As for the black turtle and the stupid dragon, they haven't contacted me yet. The vermilion bird said. Bufang nodded, indicating that he understood. It seemed that he had to hurry up. It would not be easy to completely restore the artifact's spirit. The vermilion bird told Bufang a little more. Then they fell silent. As for the Qilin lying on the side, it was sleeping soundly with its eyes closed. Bufang withdrew from the spirit sea. Xiao Ai was still giggling on the side. She was holding her computer and trying hard to reply to the netizens' questions. As for Chief Luo, he had already gone to make arrangements. Nethery and Foxy had eaten their fill, so they were resting in a pile of soft snow. Shrimpy was lying on his shoulder, spitting bubbles without moving an inch. Let's go. It's almost time to leave this place. Bufang surveyed his surroundings. He had killed countless immortals and taken back the White Tiger Heaven Stove. There was no need for him to stay any longer. The fighter plane landed. Bufang did not refuse. He led you and the others into the fighter jet. Inside the fighter jet, there was a specially prepared combat room. There was a roar. The fighter jet sped away and disappeared in a short while. Jiangdong City. Metahuman base. Bufang and the others returned to the command room. Many people in the room looked excited and worshipful when they saw Bufang, which puzzled Bufang. Senior. They're all your die-hard fans now. Xiao AI clenched her fists excitedly. She had uploaded Bufang's fighting videos to the internet, and Bufang's reputation on the internet was now very strong. Many people admired Bufang very much. Since ancient times, people had always worshipped righteous experts, so this was not too surprising. Senior. We've gathered all the surveillance footage from all over the world, and we've basically locked onto one person. Chief Luo said immediately when he saw Bufang come in. Bufang nodded. Suddenly, several shots appeared on the big screen. The camera moved and finally locked onto a figure. It was a young man who looked only 13 or 14 years old. He was a maverick with a head of long white hair that curled upwards, giving him a somewhat domineering air. If one did not look carefully, one would think that he was some rebellious teenager. He looked inconspicuous in the crowd. Yes, it's him. Bufang recognized the young man at a glance. There was no doubt that he was White Tiger. He did not expect White Tiger to be a child. Recalling White Tiger's proud appearance, it was not an exaggeration to say that he was a child. The last place this man was seen was at the border between India and Hua. Chief Luo frowned. He found that the problem was a little tricky. Bufang was taken aback. You mean, this guy might have gone to India? Chief Luo nodded solemnly. If that was the case, the problem would be somewhat difficult to solve. After all, if White Tiger went out of Hua's border, he would have to report the problem to the higher-ups. The advanced fighter jets and machines of the Special Abilities Bureau would not be able to be used. Bufang thought for a moment and felt that it was possible. Could White Tiger have been captured by the gods of India? What gods in India could pose a threat to White Tiger? Bufang thought for a while, but he could not figure it out. Then, his eyes lit up. The next moment, with his hands clasped behind his back, Bufang came to an open space. Garuda was dragged out by Bufang by the neck. This guy's wings had actually grown out. As long as the golden flames on his body were not extinguished, he could continuously regenerate. To be honest, this was the first time Bufang had seen such an amazing ingredient. Bufang asked Garuda a lot of questions. However, at first, the big bird was stubborn and refused to say anything. However, after Bufang listed out a lot of dishes, Garuda told him everything he knew. I have no choice but to tell you. If I don't, I will become one of those dishes that Bufang listed out. He put Garuda back into the system's storage space. After that, Bufang walked out of the interrogation room. Chief Luo walked over with a serious face. Senior, are you really going to India? Bufang nodded. He could not leave White Tiger alone. After all, he was just a child. With the recovery of spiritual energy on Earth, the gods of India must have awakened as well. Senior, you must be careful if you go to India. Chief Luo heaved a long sigh. We may not be able to provide much support, and India will definitely stop you. It's fine. It's just a small matter. Bufang said faintly. He really did not care about it at all. The only thing he cared about was White Tiger and the god who had captured it. According to Garuda, the gods who could threaten White Tiger in India were the three gods. They were Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. Garuda used to be Vishnu's mount, but after he made some achievements in his cultivation, he became independent. Garuda was probably regretting his decision to become independent at this moment. Of course, there were many other gods in India, but only these three could really threaten White Tiger. Shiva and Vishnu should be peak immortal kings. As for Brahma, he was most likely an immortal emperor. It was normal for such existences to threaten White Tiger. After all, White Tiger was still imperfect, and he did not even know who Bufang was. In Bufang's opinion, White Tiger was just an ignorant child. just like the naked vermilion bird woman back then. Bufang felt responsible for them. Since you've made up your mind, Senior, I'll prepare a car for you right away, Chief Luo said. However, she was rejected by Bufang with a wave of his hand. I'll set off right away, Bufang said. A car was too slow for Bufang. Senior, I want to go with you. Xiao Ai's eyes lit up as she stared at Bufang and cheered. Bufang glanced at her and did not refuse. Chief Luo did not know whether to laugh or cry. It seems Senior is going to stir up trouble again. For some reason, Chief Luo thought of Garuda's tragic end. Bufang left the base with Yu and Xiao Ai. Bufang's divine sense surged. It enveloped Yu and the others, rose from the ground, and rushed into the sky in an instant. There seemed to be a flash of light, which turned into a stream of light and shot into the distance. Chief Luo and his colleagues from the Special Abilities Bureau were all shocked when they saw this. This move is like that of an immortal. Senior is really an immortal. Chief Luo sighed with emotion. He still remembered the first time he met Bufang. He had mistakenly thought that Bufang was an ordinary person. Now that he thought about it, he could not help but blush. Beep, beep, beep. All of a sudden, Chief Luo's cell phone on his waist rang. His expression changed when he answered the call. Whoosh! The wind kept blowing. It was as if the wind was howling. However, Xiao Ai, who was flying in the sky, could not feel the wind at all. She was carrying a bag which contained cameras, computers, and other equipment. This time, she was going to follow Senior's movements live. She felt that Senior was her faith, and the world needed faith. She looked down at the ground. The mountain range was moving at a high speed. It was so fast that it was as if time had been reversed. The Himalayas were crossed in an instant. Buzz, suddenly Bufang, who was flying, frowned. He brought you and the others to hover in the sky and did not continue flying. What's wrong? You asked, puzzled. Someone is here to stop me. Bufang thought for a moment and said, Oh! You, Xiao Ai, and the others froze. Then, they raised their heads and looked into the distance. There was a plain in front of them. On the plains, dust flew everywhere. A terrible rumble echoed out. Tanks and armored vehicles were driving, kicking up dust as they aimed their cannons at Bufang. In addition to the cannons, there were red-tipped missiles that had not been fired. Howitzers, cannons, and many other weapons were aimed at Bufang at the same time. There, countless soldiers in camouflage uniforms, holding guns, were waiting for Bufang. Xiao Ai's expression changed in an instant. This looks like they're prepared. Bufang's expression remained the same. Bufang narrowed his eyes and looked at the back of the army. Over there seemed to be an enormous illusory figure entrenched there. It was a god riding on the back of a divine elephant. He maintained a strange posture and looked at Bufang from a distance. The gods of India know how to use the military power of mortals? Yu, who was standing next to Bufang, said, pursing her lips. Senior, don't underestimate military power. With the recovery of the world's spiritual energy, the military power of today has changed. It has the ability to suppress immortals. Xiao Ai's face turned a little pale. She even forgot that the camera in her hand was broadcasting live. Some people on the internet had claimed that the video was fake. Xiao Ai's live broadcast this time was also to slap those people in the face. However, she somewhat regretted this live broadcast this time. It doesn't matter. I still have to bring him back. No matter how many people come to stop me, it's all the same, Bufang said faintly. He looked at the illusory god and twitched the corner of his mouth slightly. Bufang glanced at you. His hand shook. A moment later, a honey-glazed wing appeared, and he shoved it into Nethery's hand. When you finish the wing. I'm almost done, Bufang said. You pursed her lips, but she did not refuse and took the wing. Meanwhile, little Hu and Xiaopi, who were lying on Bufang's shoulders, ran to Yu's side at the same time. Xiao Ai, on the other hand, was dumbfounded. Senior is indeed a senior. He's as domineering as ever. Is he going to wipe out the army with a single wing? Bufang turned around, his vermilion robe flapping noisily. The wind was blowing, and his long hair was fluttering. No matter what god you are, if you don't hand over the white tiger, I'll blow you all up. Bufang's faint voice rang out. The next moment, he clasped his hands behind his back and took a step forward. As Bufang took a step forward, the army on the plain in the distance opened fire at his command. Bang! 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 Armored tanks, howitzers, cannons, and other shells flew toward Bufang like they were free. In the blink of an eye, streams of fire streaked across the sky. Like a meteor shower, they smashed toward Bufang, who was walking on the plain. Chapter 16:28. Is this really okay, Vishnu? A faint voice rang out and lingered in the ears of the god sitting cross-legged on the back of the divine elephant. It doesn't matter. Earth's spiritual energy has recovered, and the power of mortals also contains special abilities that are enough to pose a threat to gods. Let's weaken the power of this Hua immortal first. The god sitting cross-legged on the back of the divine elephant smiled faintly. The god had a humanoid appearance. His skin was dark blue, and he wore gems on his body. He had 4 arms, each of which held a weapon that flashed with divine light. There were divine hammers, swords, bows, and conches. Vishnu slowly raised his head and glanced at the sky. Immediately, he saw a god riding a white bull looming in the void, as if he was in a distant time and space. The god had 1 face, 3 eyes, 4 arms, and a blue neck. He had 2 personalities, sometimes angry, and sometimes gentle. He was the Lord God of India, Shiva, who was at the same level as Vishnu. Clearly, none of these gods dared to take Bufang lightly. Or rather, none of them dared to take the immortals of Hua lightly. Boom! 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 One shell after another shot into the sky like fireworks, dazzling and blinding. Black smoke spread out, filled with an aura of destruction. Bam! The shell hit the ground, causing the ground to tremble and dust to rise high into the air. Fire! On the plains, among the densely packed army. A general in a military uniform roared with a pair of binoculars in his hand. His eyes were bloodshot. Blow up that Hua immortal! We have the most advanced god-killing weapons provided by the United States. We must blow this so-called Hua immortal to pieces. The Indian general bellowed. He had received a decree from God to stop the Hua immortal. This made the fire of war in his body burn fiercely. In particular, his army was equipped with advanced technology and weapons imported from the United States. The recovery of spiritual energy was unfriendly to the United States, a superpower in the world. The historical foundation of the United States was too weak, and its gods were all ordinary minor gods. Faced with the West, a superpower like Hua with a rich historical foundation could not resist. However, the United States had the technology. The Americans were good at researching technology. They relied on the Spirit Chi revival to develop weapons that specialized in suppressing the god. These weapons could break through the defenses of the gods, suppress the divine power of the gods, and injure the gods. The Americans had already tried the effects of these weapons. The gods of their country were killed by them with these weapons. The Americans call these weapons god-slaying weapons. In fact, it was just a type of energy that was infused into the weapon. Boom, boom, boom. Bufang walked with his hands clasped behind his back. Amidst the bombardment, he walked at a steady pace. When the bomb fell, the ground exploded, and dust flew everywhere, hiding his body within it. Blow him up! The Indian general roared. Tanks, armored vehicles, cannons, and all kinds of fighter jets roared. They did not dare to be careless when dealing with an immortal. Buzz, a huge cannonball shot towards Bufang at high speed. Bufang slowly raised his head. He held out his hand. Without dodging or evading, he directly grabbed at the shell. Where did the Indian god get his courage from? Why did he dare to use firearms and explosives against him? The weapon suddenly fell and exploded with a loud bang. Bufang furrowed his brows. He seemed to have sensed the strange energy in the weapon. This immortal of Hua must be a fool. I can't believe he dares to reach out and grab that cannonball. The Indian general could not help but laugh out loud in excitement. That weapon would definitely be able to tear through the immortal's defense and blow up his arm. The Indian army was about to become the second army to slay the gods after the Americans. Kill! Fighter jets whizzed past. Howitzers and cannons were all aimed at Bufang. The tanks rumbled and shook, and the ground trembled along with them, sending sand and pebbles flying. It was a terrifying scene. At least, Xiao Ai, who was watching from a distance, was already trembling. It was too terrifying. The tremors made her hand, which was holding the camera, tremble. This was not a movie, but a real war. The bombardment was enough to destroy a city. Beep, beep, beep. In the direction of the Himalayas, one by one, the Hua army appeared at the border. They were all armed and on guard, watching the war in horror. It was a war against the gods. The cannonball fell. However, it was caught by Bufang. Boom! The flame engulfed him in an instant. A violent force seemed to tear apart his divine power and drill into his body. However, as soon as Bufang's divine sense flickered, those forces were crushed into dregs. Interesting. This firearm has a defense-breaking power mixed with it. Bufang gave a soft cry of surprise. However, Bufang was not in the mood to study it. He did not want to waste time now. He just wanted to save White Tiger. This Indian god is quite interesting. It seems he wants to use the power of these mortals to suppress my power. It's a good idea, but… Boom! The flame dissipated. Bufang, on the other hand, stood unscathed on the spot. The sleeves of his vermilion robe fluttered. In its complete form, the vermilion robe's defense was invincible. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bufang walked forward step by step. He stepped on the ground unhurriedly. Cannonballs, bullets, and grenades rained down. However, no matter how the shells bombarded him, he remained unscathed and was not affected at all. The hearts of the Indian army palpitated. Is this God? Why? This is the most advanced equipment in the United States. Oh great Shiva, what kind of monster is this? The hearts of the Indian soldiers trembled. Keep your eyes peeled. Prepare the fighter jets. Prepare the missiles. Don't let him take another step. The general roared and gave the order. The gods and the higher-ups of the country had ordered them to stop this Hua man with all their might. They had to do it. They could not afford to let their guard down. Bam! A rumble echoed out. In the distance, a sea of flames surged. Fighter jets sped across the sky, firing bullets at them. The entire sky seemed to be covered by the fighter jet. In the direction of the Hua army, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Looking at Bufang, who was calm and composed in the midst of thousands of cannonballs, they felt like they were in a trance. Xiao Ai was about to go crazy. Her hand, which was holding the camera, was shaking. As she recorded the scene, it was uploaded to the internet. Everyone was paying close attention to this scene. The scene of one man facing an entire army was simply shocking. Everyone was so depressed that they could not even speak. All they could do was gasp for breath. Compared to the battle between the gods and immortals, this scene was perhaps more impactful. After all, firearms and explosives were more intimate to them. And they were more destructive. Bufang stood still and did not move forward. He took a deep breath. His divine sense surged out and formed an invisible screen of light. Buzz in the sky, the falling bullets, cannonballs, grenades, missiles, and so on, all of them stopped in midair. They could not move forward. The noisy sound of explosions came to an abrupt halt at this moment. The whole world fell silent. All the soldiers and generals of India widened their eyes and craned their necks to watch the shocking scene. Bufang slowly raised his hand. Then, he slowly reached out and clenched his fist. Bam! 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 All the cannonballs exploded. The sky turned into a sea of fire, with flames surging everywhere. All the bombs exploded in midair, one after another, and were completely destroyed. In the United States, impossible! India is using our latest weapon, a weapon that can destroy the defense of gods. How can this Hua man be unscathed? Gods are nothing but powerful humans who have mastered mysterious powers. They are also human beings. When the power of weapons surpasses the limit of gods, they can kill gods. The senior officials of the United States, who were watching the battle through drones, were all in disbelief. They had been watching the battle, but the power Bufang showed terrified them. Their weapons could not get close to Bufang. Tell the experts to hurry up and study it. We must find a way to crack it. The senior officials of the United States gave the order. They, who had developed a weapon to suppress gods, once again felt a sense of urgency. Swoosh! The sky that was filled with surging flames dispersed the light. Bufang watched indifferently. His vermilion robe flapped noisily in the wind. Of course, in Bufang's eyes, all this was nothing out of the ordinary. He took a step forward. In an instant, the ground seemed to shrink. Bufang approached the battlefield in a flash. Tanks and armored vehicles aimed at Bufang, trying to kill Bufang. However, the next moment, Bufang's performance was like that of a demon god, and it was suffocating. Bufang raised his hand, then gently slapped it down. A series of rumbling sounds rang out in an instant. The muzzles of the tanks were bent and fell to the ground. The war chariots were flattened. The fighter jets whizzing in the sky were also instantly smashed down from the sky by the supreme mighty force. A series of explosions echoed through the sky. The army was in chaos. The general's morale was shaking. Fire! Everyone, attack! He grabbed a pistol and roared. Although the soldiers were already scared out of their wits by Bufang, they still obeyed the order and grabbed their weapons. They grabbed their submachine guns and roared as they fired at Bufang. Countless bullets shot toward Bufang. This scene was simply terrifying. Perhaps only the weapons in their hands could calm them down. However, what happened next completely subverted their understanding, making them lose the courage to continue fighting. Those bullets were shooting at high speed. When it was 1 meter away from Bufang's body, they all stopped moving. 1, 2, 3. They kept piling up and stopping. Finally, they piled up into a thick wall of bullets. Are you done? Bufang's faint voice rang out. A moment later, those floating bullets fell to the ground, sinking deep into the ground. Bufang clasped his hands. He stepped on the void and rose up. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, he rose into the air. With every step he took, heaven and earth seemed to tremble. The whole world fell silent. With every step he took, every soldier of India felt the pressure on them grow heavier. In the end, all of them were lying on the ground, without the strength to even move a finger. The pressure made them feel despair. At the last step, Bufang stomped in the air. Boom! There seemed to be an invisible wave spreading from the sky. The soldiers lying on the ground all coughed up blood. Their faces were sallow and bloodless. He had suppressed an army all by himself. Have you seen enough of hiding in the back? Bufang said with an indifferent face. He glanced at you in the distance. There, you has already eaten half of Garuda's wing. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. Then, he turned his head and looked at the illusory god in the sky. Bufang flicked his finger. A streak of silver divine fire immediately shot out. It fell in an instant. It burned the void into nothingness. At the same time, the god riding the divine elephant, who was hidden in the void and invisible to the eyes of mortals, revealed himself. Vishnu smiled faintly. Riding the divine elephant, he stood high in the sky. Sure enough, the power of mortals can't stop you. I know what you want. If you want to save that white-haired boy, give me the stove and Garuda in exchange. When the Indian army down below saw the god, a look of respect and madness appeared on their faces. Great, supreme God Vishnu! God bless me! Great God, please punish this devil! The confidence of the soldiers had long been shattered. They were terrified. Bufang, on the other hand, was unmoved. He just looked at Vishnu indifferently. Exchange? Do you think you're qualified to exchange with me? Bufang's face was indifferent. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Chapter 1629. Vishnu's plan was to trade with Bufang. Vishnu had planned to rely on the military power of mortals to weaken Bufang. Then, he would strike again and directly suppress this unscrupulous Hua immortal. However, after the battle just now, Vishnu was a little afraid of Bufang's strength. When the strange energy developed by the Americans was added to firearms, the power of the firearms would be multiplied, and it could even break the divine power defense of a god. Therefore, even he found it a little tricky to deal with. However, he was only a little tricky. After all, he was a god, one of the three great gods of India, a supreme being. He and Shiva caught the white tiger, a white-haired boy who had run out of the egg in the spiritual energy ceiling point. They had planned to fight for the stove, a divine artifact. However, their attention was attracted by the white tiger. After catching the white tiger, they found that the stove was more practical. This made them feel depressed. They had thought that there was something special about the white tiger. It took them a lot of effort to catch this guy. The white-haired boy was extremely arrogant and crazy in fighting. He was like a mad dog. Fortunately, they were strong enough. Hua immortal! You're really arrogant, Vishnu said, his face cold. Vishnu's face turned cold. Bufang's words were so arrogant that he could not help but feel angry. He was the great god of India, a supreme being. How could this Hua immortal look down on him? I've decided. I won't give this boy to you, and that stove belongs to me. Vishnu said. The divine elephant under him suddenly let out a roar, its long trunk hanging upside down in the sky, and its upper body raised as if to crush the sky. Your elephant is not bad. Bufang's eyes lit up. Bufang's words made Vishnu even more furious. However, the people on the Hua side did not know whether to laugh or cry. Sure enough, this is Senior's style. Chief Luo, who was among the Hua soldiers, was also speechless when he heard Bufang's words. Xiao Ai even clenched her fists excitedly. That's the rhythm. Senior is so domineering. You grabbed her wings and munched on the food. Her mouth was covered in oil. He had to admit that Bufang's grilled wings were really delicious, and this scene, through his camera, was broadcasted live on the internet. Everyone was excited. Yesterday there was a rock, and one grill couldn't hold it. Now there's a divine elephant, and one pressure cooker can't hold it. Senior is a foodie, appraisal complete. Eat the mounts of all the gods and Buddhas. Senior Fang is so strong. I want to eat braised elephant. The netizens burst into laughter. It was originally a serious battle, but in the end, with just one sentence from Bufang, everyone was out of character. The divine elephant was sentient. It was furious when it heard Bufang's words. The elephant raised its trunk and let out a roar. Heaven and earth trembled. Vishnu was furious. Where is the Asura? His voice shook the heavens. The next moment, each of his 4 arms threw out a lotus. Each lotus bloomed, and 2 men and 2 women jumped out. The men were ugly and ferocious, and the women were beautiful and heroic. As soon as the 4 Asura kings appeared, they immediately brought with them a sharp aura. The 4 Asuras held their golden spears and pointed them at Bufang, brimming with killing intent. Anyone who insults the Lord will be killed without mercy. A female Asura king roared. Asura? Bufang raised his eyebrows slightly. Each of these asuras was equivalent to a top sky immortal, which was about the same level as the 4 heavenly kings. However, he had killed the 4 heavenly kings with one hand. What else could the 4 asuras do? What a pity! Asuras can't be eaten, Bufang muttered. Instantly, everyone did not know whether to laugh or cry. The female asura was even more furious. The 4 waved their spears in the sky and threw them at Bufang. Kill! The asura roared. The spears tore through the void as if they were going to pierce a hole in the sky. The power was extremely terrifying. Many people's expressions flickered. Everyone in the Hua nation's military was horrified. Bufang had no intention of getting entangled with these asuras. His behavior toward these asura kings was simple and violent. He raised his hand. Immediately, a palm slapped toward the asuras in the sky. A palm instantly condensed in the void. The palm slapped out horizontally. The spears were completely shattered by the palm. They broke into pieces. The expressions of the asuras changed dramatically. They breathed out energy and unleashed their powerful auras, trying to resist the palm. However, when they came into contact with that palm, they could feel an unparalleled force appearing. The 4 asuras in the sky crumbled in an instant, turning into dust and dispersing in the wind. With one slap, Bufang had killed 4 peak heaven immortal asuras. On the plain, the Indian soldiers were dumbstruck, and their bodies began to tremble. It was too scary. Vishnu's pupils constricted. Shiva, who was hiding in the void, snorted. Obviously, they did not expect that the 4 asuras would be killed in an instant. Vishnu, attack at the same time. Shiva transmitted his voice to Vishnu. He already felt uneasy. Vishnu focused his eyes and slapped the divine elephant with his palm. The divine elephant carried his body and immediately flew away. Go! Rumble! Vishnu soared into the sky. The divine elephant rushed out, walked in the sky, and instantly turned into thousands of elephants. 1, 2, 3, the sky was filled with a herd of elephants, trampling down on Bufang. The scene was like the end of the world. The sky darkened in an instant. It was truly terrifying. Vishnu was indeed one of the 3 great gods of India. As soon as he attacked, heaven and earth changed color. This was the power of a true god. Rumble, the sky seemed to be shaking. It was as if a supreme will was watching. Chief Luo's face began to tremble. This is an immortal king. Vishnu is actually an immortal king. The hearts of Xiao Ai and the others trembled. This is Senior's first time facing an immortal king, isn't it? I wonder if he can resist it? The people from the military were also watching. The netizens were also watching the scene through Xiao Ai's live broadcast. All of them held their breath. They were laughing, but when Vishnu made his move, they still felt terrified. The world was silent. There was only the scene of elephants running wildly. Well, elephants can be eaten. Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth. Facing the stampede of thousands of divine elephants, he did not retreat. He just took a step forward and stomped on the void. With this, all the divine elephants shuddered. Then, they stopped abruptly, knelt on the ground, and prostrated themselves toward Bufang. The divine elephants disappeared. Then, they turned into a divine elephant and neighed. There's one more. Come at me together. Bufang turned his head. His god of cooking's eye seemed to see through all illusions and looked at a corner of the void. There, a white bull appeared, and a person was riding on its back. It was none other than Shiva, one of the 3 great gods of India. 2 great gods and 2 immortal kings had appeared. This caused everyone to feel a wave of horror. This Shiva is obviously planning to play dirty. He's so insidious. Fortunately, Senior has a keen sense of smell for cooking ingredients and discovered this trick. Shiva's face was expressionless as he raised his 4 arms. Then, the white bull under him mooed and sped toward Bufang. Rumble! The bull approached in a flash. Bufang punched the bull's head, breaking its horns and making it howl miserably. Bufang grabbed the divine elephant with one hand and the bull with the other. His eyes flashed with bright light as if they were about to soar into the sky. The heaven and earth farmland. Open! Bufang furrowed his brows. Then, he raised his head and looked at the sky. There seemed to be a will surging in the sky, then dissipated. Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth. His arms bulged. The void was torn apart. He tore open a crack. Behind that crack was a boundless world. The fragrance of flowers, grass, and trees. It was a paradise-like world. The divine elephant and the white bull disappeared. They were shoved into that world by Bufang. Vishnu and Shiva's expressions changed dramatically. They never thought that Bufang would have such a trick. Kill them! Vishnu bellowed, grabbing the divine conch in his hand. Shiva's eyes lit up. Then, both of them blew into the conch at the same time. A strange sound wave spread, and the plane immediately exploded under the attack of the sound wave. Countless Indian soldiers were decapitated in the explosion. Little conch blowing into it? Bufang raised his brows. Are these two here to make fun of me? Bufang said lightly. Everyone did not know whether to laugh or cry when they heard that. The sound wave spread to Bufang. The vermilion robe shook, but he remained indifferent. The little conch had no effect on Bufang. Let's try this magic treasure. Vishnu and Shiva looked at each other, and their faces became serious. Vishnu held the sword and threw it out. The third eye on Shiva's forehead opened and shot out a divine flame that was about to burn everything. It was the karmic fire. They were immortal kings, but they could not deal with a mere Hua mortal? Bufang clasped his hands behind his back. He let the sword slash him and the karmic fire burn him. With the vermilion robe, he was safe and sound. The perfect vermilion robe had an invincible defense. Hand over that white-haired boy and I'll spare your lives. Bufang thought for a moment and said, How presumptuous! What can you do to us? Vishnu said coldly. Bufang was wearing a divine chef robe, which gave Bufang an invincible defense. However, they would not admit that they were no match for Bufang. They were the three supreme gods of India. How could they be weaker than an immortal of Hua? What can I do? Bufang had lost his patience. He clenched his Taotai arm, and the energy of yin and yang swirled around it. A terrible rumble resounded in the air. His muscles trembled, causing the void to explode. It was frightening. He threw out a punch. An invisible force enveloped Vishnu and Shiva. Both of them were horrified. Vishnu raised his hand to block it. However, under the punch it shattered inch by inch. The silver flame was burning Vishnu's body into nothingness. He turned into a lotus flower. At the same time, Shiva's body exploded and reformed into a new figure. That figure turned into a woman's appearance. You, Shiva, who had turned into a woman, was terrified. When he saw Bufang clench his fist again, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He turned and fled. Brahma! Help me! Shiva hissed. She was terrified. She felt a sense of death envelop her. The appearance of this scene. No one had expected it. Senior is so strong? Those are the two great gods of India. How could he kill them just like that? Everyone was dumbfounded. Looking at Shiva's fleeing figure, they felt their hearts skip a beat. Bufang's face was expressionless and cold. He had killed all the gods and Buddhas with one punch. Suddenly Bufang frowned. The moment the yin and yang Taotai arm smashed down, the void twisted. A white-haired boy with a swollen face and a heavy, cold chain appeared behind Shiva and in front of Bufang's fist. The moment he saw the white-haired boy, Bufang's punch came to an abrupt halt. White tiger! Bufang raised his eyebrows. The white-haired boy, who was tightly bound, raised his chin and snorted. Even if his face was swollen, he had to maintain his arrogant posture. No matter how much he boasted, he could not extinguish his arrogance. Buzz, behind White Tiger, A ray of golden light slowly appeared. 1 ray, 2 rays, 3 rays. Thousands of rays of light surged, accompanied by the chanting of Buddha. The next moment, a huge Buddha with 4 faces emerged, shrouded in Buddha's light and shining on everything. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.